Invincible Season 4 has come to an end, and according to IMDb, it gave us some of the best episodes in the show's history. Personally, I still think Season 1's finale still has all of these beats, but I cannot deny that it was a pretty phenomenal season, having probably the best overall pacing we have seen since the first, with Thrag living up to the hype and more. All the while, Mark's transition from jaded to traumatized reaches its horrific conclusion, and I was living for almost all of it. If you've been watching my videos every week, you know more or less what my overall take is on the season, but for convenience, if you haven't, I figured I'd put all my analysis videos together for one easy rewatch, or just to be background noise for whoever's trying to get some work done. So without further ado, Invincible is back, and Mark is giving Spider-Man a run for his money in the Depression Olympics. Last season was all about Mark just thinking he killed a guy. This one starts with him murdering an innocent one. Now, while people are going to debate just how justified this was, I think we can all gather around in agreement that this was a really solid way to start off Season 4, combining all the things everyone loves about Invincible. Great writing, Mark suffering, Nolan and Alan's buddy comedy, and the greatest gift this show could ever give us, Machine Head.
What do you want, Machine Head?
World peace, a pony, my name in lights, the list goes on.
So in honor of Invincible being back, let's break down everything that happened, the horrific reveals, and how we've gone from people trying to be heroes to heroes who have fallen from grace, and now we just have to see how far they're willing to go to protect the ones they love. Also, you gotta be shitting me.
You know you done fucked up, right?
Not gonna lie, it has been a while since I watched Season 3, so amongst all the hype of Mark vs. Conquest, I kinda forgot how absolutely fucked his life is right now. Bro has lived through finding out his dad was a war criminal, so naturally, he has been going through it for a while. But to then have versions of himself go around the entire planet wrecking havoc while he was just hanging around not evangelioning over his unconscious girlfriend, that's gonna leave you in an even worse place. Mark is a hero. Guilt complexes are just part of the job. So knowing that Engstrom was only able to do that because Mark didn't double tap the puddle, it's gonna weigh heavily on his psyche on top of like, oh, he's just committed to killing now. And just no amount of Cecil's propaganda can ever cover up the fact that these Invincibles were the one doing all of this, leaving Mark to finally one-up his father's numbers by becoming the most hated man on the planet. And this is without the people knowing that Mark kinda left them all to die. Because my wife. So it makes sense that he would hate himself, be hated, and throwing his every waking hour into being a hero, with none of the civilians ever being excited that the guy who looks like the dudes who leveled their city is here. Can say a lot about Invincible and how it pays out its seasons, but something that I have always enjoyed is that nothing ever feels like it's forgotten. Most superhero cartoons is just weekly shenanigans with not too much carrying over. Meanwhile, Invincible is all about the things that just happened and how that is currently messing these heroes up. Mark in each season is reeling from the events of the previous, but we also see it in the other characters. Oliver has gone from a child who just wanted to be a hero to a burnt out teen who just wants a night alone to play what I think is Pokemon. And I like how in this season, he has been set up to be one of the few remaining anchors for Mark's sanity. Previously, when it came to killing, Oliver just didn't get it. He saw good guys and bad guys, so it didn't really bother him to put down my favorite characters. The boy was just down, thought better safe than sorry. Only then Mark starts putting down people, causing Oliver to realize that this isn't always a good thing. And I like how it isn't because Oliver's stance on murder hasn't radically changed. It's because he sees what becoming a killer has done to his brother. Mark used to be chill and fun while he was hiding all of his stress. But now Mark is being eaten alive by guilt and just fatigue. He is tired, he's angry, and pushing everyone to be a hero all the time, which is just exhausting to be around, and Oliver can see just how much this is weighing him down. So it makes sense how even if Oliver is still okay with Offic villains, Mark giving in to his rage, nearly beating Titan to death, it's a scary thing for a kid to see, and he doesn't like it, which is a great way to suddenly make Oliver the voice of reason, even when he's trying to do some admittingly interesting choices in committing to the Omni-Man rebrand. And I'm gonna say, look, it's a very good thing that his brother is the most hated man on the planet right now, as otherwise, Oliver would be getting so much more smoke for wearing Omnicide logo, which does present its own interesting dilemma, because I think it is adorable that Oliver is trying to reclaim the logo, that after all he's been through, all the people he's saved, he now considers the symbol to be his, and he's not trying to just take it back from his dad. Though, just to double check the timeline, it has only been, a few months. So saying that this is his now, while people are still mourning the smears on the wall that used to be the Metro, that is the kind of useful thinking that I like to see out of Oliver. As he is an alien, he remembers everything, he has a different way of thinking than other humans, he is rapidly aging, but he is still also very young, he can be naive. He doesn't fully understand how other people might think, and how they might react to him wearing, well, Omni-Man's shit. But by his own standards, he has earned this. That logo is what absorbed his blood, sweat, and tears, so feeling a personal level of connection to it makes complete sense. But the world is complicated. Everyone has their own reactions to seeing that logo, which can make for interesting drama when Oliver runs into someone who sees it and thinks, oh, the guy who killed my children. And this is just a microcosm, just the delicious mess that is the world of Invincible. Nothing stays in last week, it's all here and crashing against one another, with it being how these people manage the chaos that really shows us who they are. Which leads to Mark's most recent turn, and how it is the most concerning one of all.
I fucked up.
Yeah, Mark killed a guy. Straight up. Fist through head, I'm sure they're still finding his teeth in Europe. And despite the bullshit Cecil will say, how that dude was an astronaut so he knew the risks? No, this was just a normal dude who got screwed over by an alien. The government also failed to do its due diligence by not checking if the Sequids left any nasty surprises, and then he just got killed by a superhero, who decided that his life wasn't worth the risk. Which, given how much of a menace these Starro knockoffs are, no, you get why Mark made the call. These are a parasitic hive mind that need only one host to coordinate their entire species. They could create a swarm that could easily take over a planet, with it only being their, frankly, it is incompetence on their part that they didn't take over the world, as they only need to send out a few spare humans outside the city radius, and they'd never be able to be stopped. But they were here. The shield was breaking, Bulletproof was hauling ass, but maybe he wasn't going to be fast enough, leaving Mark to make the call on whether this NPC's life was worth risking all of Earth's. It's fucked up, but you get why Mark would cave and do it. But what makes it sad is that this isn't Robot or Cecil, it's Mark. A hero who, despite how ironic his name might be, this boy had an unbreakable resolve that made him get up and do the right thing even when it cost him everything. If this were a kinder world, Mark would be Superman, this ideal that every hero would aspire to be, but instead he's trapped in this one, where doing the right thing is hard, and there are consequences to failure. Tack onto this how he's the most powerful being on the planet. Well, he is by the end of episode 1.
Get out the way.
So suddenly, the person no one can stop, they're seriously thinking that if this kid snaps, there's nothing we can do to put him in check. And the fact that he's showing a willingness to do whatever he thinks is necessary, that is cause for concern, as mind you, this boy is like 19. So no shit Cecil is stressing over Mark taking a life, as now this superpowered, traumatized teenager who has experienced horrific after horrific event, he can't count on Mark just being a classic hero. One that he can make plans for, find ways like, let's talk things out, kind of. No, he's kind of doing a whole anti-hero shtick, so all those old plans, out the window, and if he's less likely to take the carrots, Cecil knows that the stick is not gonna work on him for long. Especially when he finds out about Conquest.
We fucked up.
This all puts Cecil in such a massive bind, as he is trying to regain Mark's trust, but Mark is not in a trusting mood, and he's very much changing from who he used to be, which creates all sorts of tough decisions about how they're gonna manage him from now on. But despite Cecil being incredibly shady, and the ending of this episode disproves or just shows the risks involved with doing what you think is necessary, and how that doesn't always lead to the best results, I adore how Cecil then tries to still walk Mark back from this edge and just tell him hey, I know you don't like me. Have you considered therapy? And this is something that I've always loved about Cecil. He is an Amanda Waller, Nick Fury type. He is a government agency out to maintain security versus being, heroes. So for him, ethics are a luxury he cannot afford. But despite how much of these types you're usually just control freaks who lose their mind at the first sign of resistance, what makes Cecil fascinating is that he genuinely wants to protect the world and knows how to be empathetic to others. He may be an utter bastard, but Cecil knows that he can be more effective as a friend than as a boss. And given how much he overplayed his hand last season, telling Mark to seek some help is not the worst suggestion in the world. But Mark still remembers the whole put a bomb in me situation. So given that absolute void of trust, there's no one Mark can really turn to that Cecil suggests, as high chances are anything he tells them will be later told to Cecil, who would then use it against him, leaving Mark to turn around and go back to his real therapist.
Never worn a condom, ever.
Before we get to that whole debacle, we gotta check in on the other things happening in the show. And because we're right here and the footage is very grabbable, I love the little Sinclair scene that we get. This man is Mad Scientist 101. He is completely psychotic, and he was experimenting on college students for his own genius, essentially. But despite that, despite having done all these horrific things, he seems like he's turned his life around. He apologizes to Mark, goes against Cecil's orders to just say, hey, bro, I'm sorry. I know that, like, I can't really, like, apologize to any of my real victims. So, like, you're the best thing. I need to atone for this in some way. I am sorry. And Mark is still having none of it. It's truly, like, the thing that, like, sets Cecil apart from Mark is that they both have their blind spots. Mark used to want to see the best in people, but Cecil, because of his pragmatism streak, is actually willing to give way more vile people a chance, as hey, he's done some shady shit, might as well let some others have the chance to redeem themselves, or at least be productive members of society. Sinclair did some horrible things. He'll never live them down. And I do find the fact that he's dating someone who has to know everything that he did, that is the most insane part of this whole situation. But he actually seems to have made a positive change. He actually shows regret. And that is crazy. And it really just goes to show how messed up this situation is right now. That Mark, the nominal hero, the man who fought his own father to save the people of Earth, looks at this dude apologizing and still cannot bring himself to forgive him. Yes, he thinks this might be a manipulation tactic by Cecil, but it is like such a great, interesting conundrum that, okay, our heroes have their blind spots, and even former villains can find love and some form of redemption. The old conceptions of what is and isn't heroic have kind of been thrown out the window, and I like that because I do believe we're going to be reconstructing them later. You might see Mark rethink how he saw this whole scenario. Does it come after Mark freaks the fuck out about how Cecil's turning his clones, well, alternate universe selves, into those Reanimen, which, honestly, very smart call by Cecil. Should have done that with Conquest. Now, in other news, we have to talk about the bums of the globe. Look, I don't care how effective they are as a team, they are all together mid as hell. And I say this as someone who actually likes most of their characters, but the fact that Invincible Wars showed us that there are heroes who can go blow for blow with Viltrumites, the fact that Shapesmith is still on the team is insane.
I will never join you again.
There will be a lot of fighting, though.
I'll be in then.
Now, personally, I kind of don't like how the season just starts with everyone who left the team just rejoining again. Like, they took a huge moral stand before. Yes, they could be more effective heroes by working with Cecil, but that doesn't make it not feel like they're just pushing us back into the status quo, and that is just going to keep being repeated. And Samson saying, oh, he'll keep things on the straight and narrow is laughable given all the nothing this man has done for the last 3 seasons. Great dude, but being able to keep Cecil in check is not one of the things I feel like I can count on him for. Especially when you have one of Cecil's right-hand men now in charge of the team, voiced by a dude from Breaking Bad. But whatever, the gang is back together. Never mind. Now, to be real, I cringe every time someone calls Robot Rex. I constantly joke about how Rudy is like one breakup away from becoming a supervillain, but the fact that nobody wants to talk about how insane it is that Robot stole Rex's DNA to make a clone body, then took Rex's name to honor him, something that I don't know Rex that well, but I can almost guarantee he would be horrified by. This like insane, horrifically morally ambiguous shit, making it crazy that Robot is the voice of reason in episode 3. Like, he risked his life to go in and try to free civilians in the sewers, then he is the only one truly freaking out about how Invincible just killed a civilian. Like, it's crazy. I would not have expected him of all people to really be voicing this concern, and it really again makes like, oh, world's got insane. Robot is the voice of ethics. Though it does take just one near-death experience for him to suddenly go, oh, maybe we should hear Invincible out.
I've brought peace, freedom, justice, and security to my new empire.
Like, this is the thing about Robot. He is fascinating in the sense that we are essentially watching a person with a limited understanding of humanity learn to be human. He wants to be able to filter the world through a logic-based lens, but being put in a new body forces him to actually learn how to, like, interact with these people. It's no longer a video game that he just watches, it is something that he experiences, discovering fear, love, and all the messy entanglements that he previously just view from his gamer tub. He's getting to experience being a person for the first time in his life, and it makes him emotionally invested in the things he previously only considered concepts, like morality. So to be here, and to see that there are consequences to his actions, that Cecil isn't just gonna let the guy who dipped on the team be the leader again, that Invincible is willing to kill now, things that he previously might have been able to agree with as it was for the now elicits a bigger reaction as he recognizes that what just happened wasn't heroic, and that matters to him now. He just risked his life to save people, only to turn on the TV and find out that Invincible didn't do the same. That is a scary possibility, but it's one that he only entertains for so long, till he gets nearly captured by a sequid, in another case of Cecil's people not doing their fucking job, with this horrible experience leading Robot to fall back on the same thing he has fallen back on every single time. Control. Puppeting robots gave him a distance and allowed him to think he had things under his control, and now that he's actually here, he is still trying to fix things. Some of it is out of love, but others it is out of fear. So I again fall back on my theory that Robot is one breakup away from being a supervillain. Buddy had all the objections on what Invincible did, but the second he sees how close they could have come to disaster, his newly acquired morality goes out the window as he starts talking about how they gotta break the cycle. Their luck may run out one day and he is not about to put his trust in it, which is word for word what every superhero dictator says. And like at this point, all he needs to go insane is for one person whose opinion he cares about to stop liking him, and I guarantee we will see this man on the news trying to take out every possible threat to Earth. That the world can only be safe in his illogical, probably bitter hands, sending him crashing to Mark. As while Mark may be on his own arc into anti-heroism, we at least know he has friends and family who can walk him off of that edge. Robot, unless he gets real close to a lot of these people, will have basically nobody to talk him out of his control freak impulses, which we can only assume will get worse, as he and Monster Girl are now trapped in the Flaxen dimension, meaning he is going to be there for what will probably be decades. Because like if you guys remember, the timescale for the Flaxens goes both ways. Time moves faster than it does on Earth, so if the sci-fi nonsense stays consistent, that will probably mean that Robot and Monster Girl will age slower in the Flaxen dimension, giving the story a great excuse for why their lives turn into a living hell as they now have to fight to get back home and or battle the Flaxens on their home turf. As if Cecil couldn't figure out how to get to this dimension with months and billions of dollars in research, Robot and Monster Girl are gonna have to figure out their own way to get home. Also, side note, I don't know if this is fully intentional or not, but I kind of like to think that the new Flaxen symbol is meant to be an inversion of Omni-Man's logo, as if to say, yes, decades have gone by, but we remember how he tried to nuke us into non-existence, and we will not let that go. Like, I don't know if that's really what they're going for, but I think it's neat if it was. Speaking of things that are neat, Alan and Nolan in space. Every time. I laughed every time this happened. This one is probably my favorite episode out of the three. It's a great voyage into Nolan's past and like how he became a true soldier of Viltrum. Also, there's Star Trek here because why the fuck not? But we ignore them because this actually gives us our closest look at what Viltrum was and how their population got so low. And the answer being space COVID. The Viltrum Empire was just as fucked up as you'd assume. Young Nolan, who is just season 1 mark, lectures a bunch of children about their history, the death of their king, and how that just led them all to become might makes right maniacs. They are just willing to let these children die in training. But what really just drives home what an insane cult this whole society is how apparently the rite of passage for becoming an adult is to have your parents just jump you and beat the shit out of you. Making these kids fight for their lives, get beat into the ground, and accepting that you might have to blind your mother to live. who will still call her son a pussy for not going harder. Every Viltrumite who makes it to the military went through this, and while we already knew that they had killed half of their own population to quote-unquote weed out the weak, this really cements just how ingrained violence is to their society. This is just accepted, and it makes sense why they all grow up to be wannabe psychopaths. That from the beginning, they are raised to believe in a mission of conquering the galaxy, that it's for the good of all people, they say. Meanwhile, child abuse is a requirement. This society is a pipeline for creating tools instead of people. As if they'll do this to each other and their own children, you know they will do anything for their leaders and hurt anyone else in the process. It also goes a long way to explain why we have so many maladjusted individuals in the cause. As yes, Conquest, probably the most insane Viltrumite, but even through like all of his desires for destruction and chaos, he still can acknowledge the soul-crushing isolation that comes from being feared by the rest of his kind. For how much they hype up Viltrum and want to like repopulate their species, they do not give a fuck about each other. They don't care one way or another if they live or die, merely writing off those deaths as just, oh, they were weak. Viltrumite society is built around killing empathy. They have been like this for centuries, with the Scourge virus only making things worse in a lot of ways. Because before, they were already working on a mythologized ethos of why their mission was so important. That Argyle was unjustly killed by a traitor, and that's on them to carry on his legacy. They believed killing half their population was necessary, whilst creating a sense that there is no going back from this, or else all those deaths would be for nothing. So, to then get hit by a bioweapon, one that they know came from their enemies, it caused those that remained to become even greater zealots, as they now face extinction with the constant reminder of their dead driving them to more desperate measures. And I just gotta say, the Ring of Viltrum being all the dead Viltrumites, metal as hell. That is so freaking cool. But it's also crazy they had to set up an actual breeding program to try and save their population, where rather than just sending their agents to prepare plans for conquest, Nolan was also sent to fuck. He was really also here to see if human Viltrumite hybrids were acceptable levels of mutt, which is important to a species obsessed with strength and genetic purity. And it's crazy that this is the same plot from Superman.
Take as many wives as you can, so your genes and kryptons and light and legacy will live on in this new frontier.
Now this does make a lot of sense in hindsight, but it's also outrageously funny to me just to imagine like, okay, we have to go like repopulate everyone. We gotta try this with some of these other species, but we also can't really blow our cover, so it has to be consensual, which means we have to send Viltrumites who historically lack empathy and have them somehow figure out a way to get laid. And as we see, it must have been really difficult because Nolan, he was an asshole. He was a rude prick with a raging superiority complex even when Debbie was pregnant with Mark. How Viltrum expected their soldiers to consensually get people to sleep with them, that is, like I see the game plan, but they definitely need to do some like dating classes before sending these soldiers out. But that ties back into the idea of how every Viltrumite is essentially a tool for the Empire. They did not raise people, they raised weapons. And this is then like a funny contrast to then see with Cecil, who is able to fake being kind, even like, you know, he can have like genuine amounts of empathy and kindness for others. And all of this then feeds back into Nolan's development, as he is forced to face the consequences his actions had on others. That sure, he's okay with suffering for what he did, but seeing again what Viltrum has done to planets that just had the potential to be threats, he realizes that he was complicit in wiping out entire civilizations just on the off chance some insane alien monsters were used against them. He's committed atrocities in their name, and now he finally recognizes that those were in fact atrocities, not necessities. He doesn't immediately want to jump in and join the coalition. He says like, yeah, I'll fight my people, but for personal reasons, but to side with his enemies, that is the bitter pill he just wasn't ready to swallow immediately. But seeing him go back through memory lane, all the people he's hurt, all the civilizations he's nearly wiped out, and we see him realize that, okay, this is just going to keep happening if the Viltrum Empire continues to exist. It was one thing for Nolan to turn his back on them, fight to save Alan, but to become complicit in his people's destruction, that is hard. We saw all that he did in their name, but to look back on all that and to realize it was a mistake, to actually apologize for his actions. That is all huge for Nolan, with his moral crisis getting even worse when he meets Thaddeus, the dude who betrayed his people and is basically the devil of Viltrum society. And here he is telling him that he was the one who unleashed the Scourge virus that killed all of Nolan's friends and family. Which, even if Nolan recognized that this is justified, even like, oh yeah, good play to wipe out your enemies, he still cared. Despite everything Viltrum did to him, he still mourned and cared for his people. And that's not something Nolan can just forgive, even though when you think about it, Thaddeus just did... Or is it Thaddeus? Let's fuck it, I'm just calling him Optimus Prime because that's easier to remember. Optimus Prime did just what Nolan used to do, wiping out threats, only in Optimus's case, it was to protect the universe instead of his people. These two men have always done what they thought they had to do, which I think is the big overall theme of this season. Necessity. How heroes and villains justify their actions saying that they did what they needed to. We had the Dino dude saying we need to save the planet by killing all the people, the interdimensional lady who wants to steal power for her people, Mark protecting his family, all the shit Cecil's doing, then Thrag, who's just doing everything to preserve Viltrum. Every character we meet is in a state of justifying the horrible things that they do by saying that they had to, that it was necessary, and then we watch them try and live with those decisions. Titan has personally always just tried to find his freedom. He has not wanted to serve under Machine Head, he wants to be able to just do his own thing. And despite that, despite all that he's sacrificed, all the shenanigans and plans he's pulled, at the end of the day, because he got outplayed by Machine Head in tricking him to go against Mr. Liu, Titan has to choose his family's safety and security over his own freedom, rejoining the criminal underworld, with him now having to live with those compromises and the decisions that are gonna come along with it. Machine Head again, MVP, always amazing. This man could have a podcast and I would watch every episode. But in more serious news, Mark now has to figure out if killing his enemies is something he can actually keep doing and when those absolute solutions should be applied, as he is getting itchy at just random villains of the week. But rather than just saying, oh, sometimes you have to kill villains, Invincible does seem to be going the extra step to now start pointing out the flaw in this mindset. Thaddeus picked his own absolute solution. He killed the bad guy to stop him from leading their people down an even darker path, but that only energized the Empire in their psychotic crusade across the universe. And when he tried to kill all of them with the virus, same thing. Again, trying to apply a permanent solution doesn't guarantee that the problem actually ends. Nolan spent his entire career trying to kill all of his problems, and some of them still are around to bite them in the ass, even if he's the one that, well, let them loose. At the heart of Invincible, it feels like the story is dancing around this idea of necessity and humanity, that we're watching Mark get driven further and further into despair, forcing himself to be the guy who saves the world, not the good guy, when being the guy who does what's necessary to save the world isn't what turned his dad. Nolan isn't here changing his ways because his son gave a good argument. He's here because no matter what, Mark loved him. He fought for him. He refused to believe that his father could just be some monster. And that small bit, despite all the many concussions he was being given, that love and humanity changed Nolan. So while we're in a very dark period right now, I don't think that idea is going to go away anytime soon, as Invincible is a story that clearly loves superheroes. It's not here just trying to deconstruct and make fun of like, oh, the tropes. It is here to reconstruct the genre and why we need stories about hope and perseverance. That having to make the hard calls and always do the most logical thing doesn't create a world you want to be in. Mark has been constantly surrounded by people telling him what he needs to do. So now he's dabbling in his own absolutes and killed a man. For real this time. And now he has to figure out if this is something that he wants to keep doing, and if he'll still have this in him when it comes time to stop Viltrum. As the most fucked up way this could go, we could really just have a season of Mark deciding like, okay, no, I don't want to take lives, only for his dad to show up and say, hey, we have to go kill everyone else. Mark is reeling from conquest, is jumpy and debating killing random villains of the week. He's just not in a great place, and I cannot wait for things to get worse for him. Oh, so was that a pregnancy test?
Congratulations! It's a bastard.
The only thing I'm good at pulling out of is the parking lot of a Planned Parenthood, and that just comes from years of experience.
So yeah, turns out Eve getting railed by Mark wasn't all fun and games. And while I'm sure she can blame a lot of things for this, I'd personally put my money on her making condoms with her powers, since those are glitching out horribly, which... Oh boy, where do I even begin with this? As this is so perfect for my hater ass. As I don't care too much about Mark and Eve being together. Like, they're not awful, but it's always felt like the show is telling me to like them more than showing me beyond, oh, they're perfect for each other. She gets the life. And that was only compounded in season 3 when they actually get together. And suddenly all of Eve's storylines get shot in the back of the head to make room for her consoling Mark on a roof 15 times. So for everything in Eve's life to stop the second she becomes Mark's girlfriend, then in the next season, she gets pregnant. It might as well be Christmas, as I could be so mean about this and how the show's handling Eve. But to not be an outright hater, I do think this development could be fine. Again, the thing about Invincible is that it is really good at like sprucing up or putting a twist on classic superhero tropes, reinterpreting them or using them in a way that makes them feel fresh. But when it comes to the superhero romantic tropes, those have always stood out as they are stale as fuck by comparison. This show is running the same playbook they would have used in the 80s, and despite having the occasional rare scene like Amber and Mark breaking up, not doing enough to cover up how played out Mark's relationships have been for me personally. So it is borderline hysterical that Invincible has gone from making Eve's life all about supporting Mark, suspiciously in time for her to get maimed so he'll lock in to beat Conquest, then in the next season, give her a pregnancy scare. This show, it is speed running the comic book love interest tropes, and at this point, it is actual comedy. But to step aside from the fact that yes, they are doing these cliches, how the story handles all this going forward will be the actually like, okay, make or break part. Eve's powers are on the fritz. This is something that she has to struggle with. I hope we never have to see her fuck-ass parents again, as I've never watched a scene with them and be like, oh, I've learned something new about how terrible they are. Though yes, Mark is now feeling extra guilty about everything because of course he is. That's his default mood these days. Meanwhile, we don't know what's gonna happen here. Eve could just tell Mark, but given how Nolan is like 3 episodes away from showing up, and at that point he is going to tell him to pack his shit, we're going to space, something that is heavily hinted at by the opening where the white background keeps shattering to reveal like stars moving through space. So yeah, we're getting a space season, with all this creating a rough situation where Eve might have to stay behind while Mark goes off on his war. If her powers were working, yeah, you can make an argument that she can tag along, but given how badly she was hurt by the other Invincibles, the talk Mark got from her dad, it would be highly in character for him to want to keep her out of harm's way, so she's gonna be left on Earth. And that's just if her powers worked. Without them, he is going to be begging her to stay behind, and she's now pregnant, so he's probably gonna ask Cecil to teleport her off the spaceship as they fly away, leaving us in a place where Eve has to grapple with what the fuck is she supposed to do, and seeing how like all this is unraveled, that might be the actually interesting part. As high chance, I don't think she's gonna tell him. She knows what an awful headspace he's in, and they're both teenagers, and now they might have a kid. That is a stress Mark cannot handle right now, and Eve knows this. So we're probably gonna watch the king and queen of talking on roofs to start breaking down as they suddenly stop having their little chats. But more positive news, Debbie and Paul are actually adorable together, and I'm kinda happy this normal ass guy is around. Look, love Debbie, favorite character. I always adore the writing for her and the small subtleties of, okay, what does she do with her life after Nolan, and how has that emotionally affected her, and seeing how her, being one of the best cartoon moms, is what really saved the earth by making Mark into such a good kid. We're seeing this repeat with Oliver. She is like having her own moral dilemmas about like whether she wants to move out of her place or not, which I don't think she's gonna do because the turnaround in these Invincible seasons is so quick. I don't think they'll have the time to make new assets of a house. But it's cool, I like her, and I am going to kill myself if she just gets back with Nolan. Overall, fantastic start to season 4. Can't wait to see what happens next and to appreciate what a joke Conquest Prison was.
Shit.
Yeah, the strongest villain Mark has ever faced is free and groveling before Grand Regent Thrag, who I know too much about because comic book Twitter won't shut the fuck up about him, and that one rando who Mark is gonna have to recruit. But my god, the hype around this dude was insane. But even without knowing like the events, you still get the fear factor, as Viltrumite society is built around strength. So if you're gonna be the leader, you have to be the strongest one, and if even Conquest is going to grovel at your feet, you know that Thrag is going to be an insane threat. And given how it's a tradition at this point, I do wonder how many people he's gonna use Mark to kill. This is about to be the easiest video of my career, as this episode kinda sucks. Somebody with no money just lost a sure thing as Invincible officially has a filler episode.
I'm so sorry. It had to end this way, Mekami.
What the fuck is this piece of shit?
Never thought I'd see the day, but oh well, here I am talking about a cartoon set in hell with a character going through an unexpected pregnancy. Yeah, I don't know how this happened again either. Wild how much of that lines up, but even crazier than me going back to my old drug is how I now have to describe Invincible teaming up with fucking Satan as mid. But here we are, so we're gonna keep it short as, while not terrible, this episode is about to have me defending anime filler, which is a sentence I never thought would ever come out of my mouth. Also, Eva's probably gonna abort the baby.
Or not.
Now, to explain my headspace going into this episode, I have not read the comics. I want to wait till the show ends. But between getting blasted in the face by spoilers on Twitter, Shorts, and my comment section, I have been forced to learn a couple things about what's going to happen and what doesn't happen in the comics. Like how Debbie was apparently a nothing character instead of the GOAT, and Eve dated William to piss off Mark. Also, Amber was blonde. Because if you're gonna steal Nightwing's fit, last name, and ass, might as well take Spider-Man's love triangle too. To be honest, I know a little bit more than I let on. You'll never know how much. But of what I do know, for sure, is that Mark going to hell isn't in the comics, which isn't a problem. Personally, from what I've been able to gather about discourse around the adaptation here, is that Invincible is in many ways a massive non-visual improvement on the comics. This is Kirkman's second draft of the story, with this allowing him to tweak things and add a lot to really hone and perfect what he was going for, typically to beloved results. Conquest was originally just a menace, but with that monologue about how lonely he is, how all he wants is a friend, and how Mark will have to live with that for the 3 seconds he was supposed to have left, those little additions really elevated Conquest to be truly amazing, becoming a case study for how Viltrum cultivates miserable people who are expected to be tools versus, well, people who have humanity. When Invincible adds something, usually it's for the better. So them deciding to add in Mark, getting sent to hell to help Damon Darkblood just stop one of the flame summons from Skyrim, yeah, I'm gonna say yes to that shit in a heartbeat. Are you kidding me? That sounds awesome. So what went wrong? Easy. It's dragged out.
Hurry it up, will ya?
Again, this episode on its own, the concept, the idea of what they're doing, not terrible. Still enjoyed it well enough. Knowing that based on the title card, what's gonna happen next for Mark, it put the idea in my head that this was just meant to be a fun filler episode with maybe something that they'll work in later. The mummy taking over the woman, absolutely the funniest part of the episode. But everything else that was added in, it kinda didn't fully work for me. But then it got annoying, as basically every joke, the thing you're supposed to be laughing at, is just how long every single one of them is. Darkblood talks slower than he ever has. This dude is putting a 2-second pause every 3 words. We gotta watch them take their helmets on and off. Make a joke pointing out how often they take them on and off. Who made them that way? 2 minutes of Mark falling down a hole. Another minute of Darkblood going up and down a hole. Backstory, lore. Whole epic battle only for Mark to just hit a woman every 5 seconds, proving just how unserious this always was. And then we just move on to shit that actually matters. I honestly think the concept for this episode is fine. Invincible has dabbled in episodes that do feel like one-offs, but usually with those, they contribute to the greater overall narrative. Mark going into the future leads to him further microdosing being a murderer before he actually becomes one, and also foreshadows how he's probably gonna get hit with that new Scourge virus, as he had to leave Earth because he got sick. There's enough here to tie this plotline into the rest of the story, and it also makes Mark bummed out enough that it leads to him and Eve just officially dating. In contrast, everything that happens in hell feels like it could be cut and nothing would be lost. Which is crazy given that this is an episode where he dons his old costume again. Which, in a tangent, for how much this look was hyped up, it's crazy to me how short of the time span was for him wearing this suit. I was expecting way longer, or at least have him go through a little bit worse. For what has been described as, this is the lowest part of Mark's life, I'm like, no, it can't be. His mom's alive. Though, for how short he wears this thing, that does actually track with the original Black Suit arc, where Spider-Man had that shit on for a week before dumping it at the first sign of trouble, and that led to a much better villain getting released. So, for what could have been an episode to help transition Mark back into his old fit, this really doesn't add much other than saying the subtext out loud. Necessary evil, lesser of the two. But I really do think that they could have had Mark and Artie's convo just be 40 seconds longer, and it would have accomplished the same thing. Fuck, I think it kind of does it on its own already. With Shot in the Dark, no scope needed. That's what happened in the comics, isn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah, no shit. You can tell. If I'm gonna praise this episode for anything, it's just like, guys, we have to give it to like the production team. Congrats on saving so much money and doing the most blatant hiding the mouth to avoid animating it I've ever seen. Honestly though, the greatest sin this episode commits isn't that like, oh, it's a filler episode or they recasted William for some reason. It's that, yeah, I've watched a lot of anime filler and most of them are a waste of time. But the thing with this one here is, it is so centered around comedy and jokes that are dragged out and are repetitive, it unfortunately commits the worst sin of all. Not being funny enough to get away with it. And this is gonna be completely personal taste. If you enjoy these, like, oh yeah, this is going to be worth your time, but for me, no. And for the first time ever watching Invincible, I felt the urge to hit the skip button. But hey, it's done. This is probably the only time they could really add filler for this season. But understanding why it's like this, well, they just needed the episode because that's how many episodes were ordered. That doesn't make it better. And if Mark is really going to leave next episode or like the one after that, I kind of wish we just had like a slice of life type deal to really make us appreciate the Earth and all the characters we probably won't see for a while. But it is what it is. They probably still have at least grab tech jackets, so they're going to be here for a little bit longer. So let's just talk about the shit that actually matters.
Pregnant?
Eve is pregnant, William is a different dude, but hey, he's excited for the kid. Meanwhile, Eve is having a classic do I want the baby or not. Overall, the sequence is fine. Eve is kind of between a rock and a hard place. She would like to be a mom one day, but this is simply the worst timing imaginable. Her boyfriend's a murderer, and she's just not ready to be a mom. This is a serious conversation about a person wondering what they're gonna do in this situation. This is a very mechanical scene for me where we need it to get to the actually interesting stuff of Eve trying to tell Mark, to set up her feelings on the subject, with them all being exactly what you'd expect from an unplanned pregnancy.
Yeah. This is some bullshit.
Personally, from Eve, the things I kind of want to see out of the storyline for her is that I kind of want to see her have her grapple with motherhood and what having kids means to her. As from the special, we know that she saw what the government did to her mother, where they forced a brain-dead woman to be a baby factory for their experiments, and her adopted mom is unhappy and clearly settled for an asshole. With all these things being potential complexes that Eve has to work through when it comes to the idea of having kids. That she might have to resent the idea of having to play the bad hand she was dealt, and I do wonder if she'll talk to Debbie like, what the hell am I supposed to do here? My mom's advice is terrible. But the weirdest thing for like Eve being pregnant for me is that honestly, whatever Mark's reaction to it will be, that's kind of the thing that I'm the least interested in. He's gonna shit a brick. His dad is saying they need to go to war. He'll cave eventually because the title card shows them going to space. So really, what's on the line here is how Eve is gonna handle and react to this. What other parts of her characters is gonna touch on and what new wrinkles will it add? You know, besides this wasn't planned, it was an awful time, and how much is the abortion? The thing that kind of gets me slightly disinterested is that Eve has been so accommodating to Mark's hero life. She has always been supportive, almost to an overly nice degree since they started dating. So I struggle to see this pregnancy really pushing Eve to put her foot down, ask Mark to not leave. Like, at least if this were, and I don't want this to be drama, but if this were Amber pregnant, we at least count on like some drama about like, oh yeah, this could be the actual breaking point for the relationship. Hero life versus personal. But with Eve, based on how we've seen them be a couple, I can't see Eve fighting for Mark to stay or that him leaving could be the end of it all. The show clearly has set them up to be soulmates, so the real loss is they will lose a kid, that will be traumatic, and they won't be together. And I'm kind of on them being together, so I have nothing to lose. Like, I will be annoyed if Eve doesn't go with Mark. As if she doesn't. I cannot fathom that they would have Mark dip and come back to him suddenly having a kid. They're not gonna jump straight to that this early in the series. Unless the space arc takes like the next, I don't know, 3 seasons. But whether she keeps it or not, just be like, okay, yeah, Mark's gonna be bummed out and it's gonna be a hurdle that these two have to work through. That's kind of about it. Look, the episode is what it is. Curious to see how they'll handle the kid, but not gonna lie. We know that Mark is gonna join his dad. But his dad showing up is like, okay, it's serious. Mark's gonna have to leave, but the beef between them has simmered. They'll be fine. Mark and Eve, they'll be fine no matter what. What I actually care about, the thing that I need to see, it's not Mark, it's not Eve, it's Debbie. Seeing Nolan, and the absolute catastrophe that will rain down on this man's head for all the bullshit he put her through. As she really just started to move on with her life. Her kids are great, not his, these are her babies, and she just got a decent dude in Paul, who she's about to move in with, but here comes her fucking war criminal ex-husband, and he's about to tell his son and maybe Oliver, pack your shit, we're going to war. And while Mark's reaction is definitely gonna be it's necessary, Debbie is about to have an Oscar-worthy scene calling out how unfair all of this is. That Nolan can just show up, destroy her life again, meanwhile he's gonna take it and squeak out an apology, as he knows she's right. He did her dirty, he's doing her kids dirty, but this is what's gonna take to stop Viltrum, and for how much of this season is built around doing what is necessary, the boys will be leaving with him, and Debbie should be allowed to become a fucking supervillain after this. Look, next week we're about to get some good food, or at least I hope it is, as we could honestly just have the whole next episode be about them recruiting tech jackets, and that might be filler. But anyway, we're gonna get the Debbie Nolan scene, which is all I really want out of life. You know, it's crazy how despite Viltrumites being raised to be living weapons, two of them have turned out to be the biggest yearners in the franchise. Okay, this was a wild fucking episode. We started with what I thought was gonna be Peak, and then we collect a DLC character only to then move on to Mark, getting to have his traditional once-a-season Viltrumite jumping. Shit was pretty good, and though I've sworn off talking about the animation because it's always the same, I think this is one of the few times I'm gonna break my rule. As if every space combo is gonna be this unexpressive, we might be cooked. But then again, if that means they get to lock in for one of these fights, the space arc might be great. Though again, we all know what we're really here for. Nolan and Debbie met, and thank God it didn't go where I thought it was going to. So let's just get into everything this episode gave us, and just, yeah, it was pretty fucking good. Okay, first thing to get into, I want everyone to raise your hand and tell me again how much the Hell episode really helped push Mark's development and embracing the necessary evil of it all. As dude literally just took 20 seconds and said, yeah, there is no choice here. Mark is a hero. He wants to protect his family. He wants to protect the Earth. And if this had happened at a different point, maybe there would have been some debate. Maybe he would have been against his father. There could have been some other emotions. But after last season alone, no, Viltrum needs to be stopped. Conquest was a nightmare. Anissa beat his ass. So one Viltrumite alone is enough to destroy the planet. Hearing that there's only 50 is not that much of a comfort, as he knows that these motherfuckers last forever and they do hold grudges. So Nolan showing up and saying, hey, we have to go kill 50 people or the Earth is doomed, he was always going to say yes to that. That is like an unwinnable situation, and Mark addresses it as such. There's no real alternative. He simply has to go, and that has always been the vibe of the story based on the stakes that they set. These people hijack the story. In comparison to the threat they can bring, they take priority over everything else, including Mark's happiness, which has basically been non-existent for a while now, especially when he's getting his ass beat still every other week. I feel like I want to do a power scaling video soon and just see if that actually can ruin a story for someone, as this show has been very inconsistent, I'll say. But that's a topic for another time. Instead, all we have is a son reuniting with his father and just getting the story of, yeah, this is bad. No one revealed what he really came on Earth to do, and it's just, it is what it is. With Nolan then going the extra step to say, hey, can I also maybe talk to my wife? And Mark giving the very good, immediate answer of, dude, is this for you? What are you expecting to happen here? And Nolan is still, he feels like he needs to do it. Except that's a lie, he really wants to do it. Insert sex joke. He's really here to talk to Debbie.
Oh, please take me back. The dating scene is a nightmare. I'm begging.
Now, something that I really like about Nolan in this episode is that he he's looking for something. He's here on Earth after realizing like, oh, I was in fact changed by my experience. You can look at season 1 as being Nolan trying to so desperately reject his humanity that everything he did was him trying to reassert like, oh, I'm a Viltrumite, this is what we do, my son is one now, so I can't put this off any longer. And then he keeps doing horrible things trying to tap down on that growing sense of humanity that he knows is there. He beat his son, not just because it was the tradition, because he was trying to force Mark to do what he is already forcing himself to do, which is to kill all of his empathy and subjugate Earth. But he's realized that that was a mistake. That wasn't who he is, it's not who he wanted to be, so now he's on Earth, where he did so many terrible things, and he is here desperately looking for that small bit of hope of, maybe I could go back to the way things used to be. And everyone's saying,
bro, are you high?
Even Artie, who was trying to like have this normal conversation, take a few beers, and they're like, okay, chit chat, this and that. The second Nolan's gone, he is fucking sighing relief. He was about to have a heart attack as he was terrified. And I feel like Nolan probably knew this. He was talking to Artie, who was like trying to find that one bit of like, yo, you're kind of my only friend here on Earth. Let's yuck it up like we used to. But even then, things can't go back to the way they used to be. This is something that I've always loved about Invincible. It is constantly evolving. It's the characters reacting to the previous events of the story, reacting to people, reacting to the events that they actually forgot about. And that is what makes it so brilliant and so messy, and just the characters feel so volatile, but also so fleshed out as a result. And now here's Nolan, who, knowing that humanity is like this, still knowing that what he did was bad, despite that, he still gives the vibe that he wanted things to go back, praying that there might still be a place for him here, even if it's going to require him to do a lot of work to make up for what he did. Only for the conversation with his ex-wife to remind him of just how badly he fucked up. Debbie, from what I've been able to gather, is like the character that's been the most changed by the adaptation process. Apparently in the comics, she was just the mom and blamed Mark for Nolan going away. No, like for real, that's apparently a thing. And that's horrible, especially with what Nolan did to his face. But here, Debbie is one of the best characters in the show. She was the one who pieced together that Nolan was a murderer. She also has a whole arc of trying to find out like what is her life without Nolan. Just the pain, the regret, the isolation of having dedicated so many years to him, only to find out that it was all a lie, and that he thought of her as a pet. Like, that's gonna fuck someone up, any divorce will, but to have the stakes be this bad, to think that you were dating a hero only for them to turn out to be a supervillain, that is going to cause some serious angst, and it was actually really good. Debbie is one of my favorite characters in the show, so I have been looking forward to this scene for so long, but also dreading it as well. As for the life of me, I do not want these two to just get back together, because then it'll basically throw away all the good character work they had just done with Debbie. From where we've seen her, from who she's dating to how she's been trying to move on with her life, despite Nolan's influence constantly getting in the way, she has been making progress. She has been defining herself outside of him. So to have them just reconcile, that would be honest to God character assassination. Debbie is better than that. She deserves better than that. And frankly, based on how the scene goes, I think Nolan kinda deserved worse.
Andressa was a mistake.
It was at this moment that he knew. He fucked up.
Look, this dude came in with a fully rehearsed speech about how he's changed and like all the regrets and all the things he's sorry for. And I'm like, good, okay. Clearly every other alien you were apologizing to in your whole tour was just preparations for this, and still here you are, trying to vibe check how things are going with your wife. Nolan is out here saying, yo, I fucked up. Maybe I can fix what I did. I can, like, never go back to things they were. Of course not. But what if I fix the damage? And she is not having any of it. And that is the thing that I like the most. Despite all of Nolan's personal growth, everything that's changed about him, and everything that's changed about Debbie, Nolan is still a yearner. I miss my wife is one of my favorite lines he has ever said. So for him to be here, to give this whole speech, to explain like, okay, this is my backstory, this and that, he really, underneath it all, is just realizing and acknowledging how badly he fucked up. that he really had a great thing here, that she changed him, and he threw it all away, and he regrets all of it. This is Nolan almost at his most vulnerable, where he doesn't really say it, he's not on his knees in apology even though he probably should be. He is just here, and you can tell he wants so badly to get her back, to apologize to her, to have some kind of like reconciliation where they can like rebuild this bridge. And she says no, that she heard all of it, acknowledges all of it, and it still pisses her off. That Nolan, for all of his bullshit, is still down here talking about, oh, I can fix things. As for Nolan, this is him at his most optimistic. He desperately wants this, even though I think he knows fundamentally that this is not going to work out. But he hopes. And she hears that hope and takes it more as an insult. That he is over here thinking that they can somehow patch things up, that he can make amends for what he did, when there's nothing that he could do to really overcome or make up for all the trauma and damage that he has done to her and everyone else. The families he killed, the nights she has spent just wide awake thinking about all the horrible things he did, probably wondering, did I make a mistake or did I miss something? And she is never going to get that time back. She's never going to look back on those years without this taint of what Nolan did and what he said about her. Debbie is so valid for yelling at him for all of this, even more so when she calls out how BS him saying like, oh yeah, my bug wife, I didn't really love her, that was a rebound. And she says, is that supposed to make me feel better? That you used another woman, Oliver's mom, my son, mind you, and you're saying you didn't care about her to make me? It's so good. Love that for her. As yeah, it really does highlight just Nolan did not handle any of that grief well. And I also fully expected Oliver to pop in at that exact line. He didn't, but Oliver has plenty reason to be mad at his dad for, so I'll wait for that one to come back at some point. But this scene, it is good. Sandra Oh, easily the highlight. I'm loving that scream so much. The line that I like the most is that when Nolan says that, oh, you changed me, her response back is that I failed. And that really just cements like how this relationship really is at this point. That she did have this great, wonderful, positive effect on him, but that doesn't really take away just all the pain, all the anxiety, and just the effect his betrayal has on her. That he may be able to look back on this relationship and regret it, but still love her. She will look back on this relationship, and despite part of her liking or loving him still, she will always hate everything that is attached to it, except her kids. They are the only unambiguous good things she can say she got out of Nolan. So him showing up with an apology, no shoes, and saying he's gonna take her kids, yeah, there's no way this conversation was ever going to go well. It was good, fantastic even. I only have 2 complaints about it, which is A, I think this is kind of boringly shot. I feel like we could have been really a lot more dramatic with this, get some crazier lighting, something a little bit more moody, call back to when she found out he was a killer, but whatever, atmosphere, yada yada. The other thing, some people might disagree with me on this, but I don't like how she brought up, do you still think I'm a pet? That was a one line where something about the staging, maybe she said a little bit too fast, but for me that was giving, oh, we kind of have to address this because it was such an iconic and horrible thing he said, but also that's what the fandom is probably always talking about. Something about how it's said is just, after all the yelling, I kind of laughed at it. It was a little bit too funny and too bit off the cuff. You know, like, wish we could have done something to stage that a little bit differently. Still, overall, great scene. And we go back to even better ones as Debbie is now talking to her kids. And she's not really fighting the idea that they're going to leave. She gets that this is a horrible situation. Your father is fucking me yet again, but I know you need to do this. I understand how horrible everything is. Viltrum must be stopped, but please, let's just have this one last dinner to give them this moment of still being a family before they are gone from her life for what could potentially be years. And it's just so sweet. Dorky, funny. Paul can't get the wine open, and he's like, damn. This is the scene you know we're gonna cut back to in flashbacks when Mark is getting the shit kicked out of him and remembering all the good times. I said it once, but I'll say it again. Mark and Oliver are her kids. Her influence is the reason that they still are heroes, and hopefully that'll get them through all the horrible things that are gonna happen later. Also, Oliver is just coming along because, no, he actually has a very valid thing here of like, I saw, because I remember everything, my world get destroyed by Viltrumites. They are horrible. I've seen exactly how dangerous they are and what they could be doing to other planets, so I'm not gonna sit around and just let them come back and destroy Earth. as Oliver knows he probably can't take more than 2. So with that in mind, him suggesting, okay, I am definitely coming along despite Mark initially not wanting it, then I'm like, okay, makes sense, we'll clear it. This kid is going to get so fucked up though. I feel like we spent the last 2 seasons microdosing Oliver getting maimed, so I am this poor kid. It's either him or Nolan. One of these two have to get absolutely destroyed by the end of this. At that point, there's no stakes. But at least we know there's guaranteed angst as he has beef with his father. Cannot wait for the solo father-son outing where they have to deal with just all the things that have been left unsaid in their relationship. The main one being, I understand the value of human life now. Holy shit, Dad, you are a monster. But this also could provide a nice little dichotomy where Mark and Nolan, they're kind of okay. Mark doesn't love his dad, like he does love his dad, but they're kind of like neutral. It's not gonna get worse or better, but they at least can work together. So Oliver coming in here with smoke for his father and just general, you're not my dad energy. That's a nice way to spice up the dynamics between all the characters, so can't wait to see that play out. Though I will say, the moment in this episode that actually touched me the most, that actually got me to go, aww, that weirdly enough was Oliver hugging Paul. I don't know, it's like, Paul is such a weird normal guy. He's kind of a sad sack, like he's not a loser, but in a world of superheroes, him just being so normal, it's funny and like, oh, he's just here doing his best. So for Oliver to give him a hug of all people, it's weirdly adorable and touched my soul. It's kind of like if Jerry from Rick and Morty suddenly got a W. It's like, oh, it's been a while, he's earned this. But speaking of things that touched my soul, in this case mainly because it hasn't, Eve is getting an abortion.
Gasp. I never would have guessed.
Look, the story might throw me for a loop by dropping another baby at Mark's feet, or make me confused in hindsight, like how Rudy did a full body scan of Eve but didn't notice she was pregnant. But at this point, it does feel like that whole plot line is over. Eve didn't tell Mark. He is now off in space. She is now trapped at Earth, and it does feel like the reason they had Eve and Seth Rogen talking to one another is just so that we as an audience can see that Eve knows everything. She knows the stakes, and based on everything we've seen about how she interacts with Mark, always trying to support him, always trying to ease his burden, yeah, she was never gonna tell him, and I highly doubt they're now gonna have her keep the kid that he's suddenly just gonna find and like, oh yeah, congrats, we're parents now, goodbye teenage superhero antics. Like, here's the thing that I think is very important to keep in mind with superhero stories. The comics are historically soap operas. That's the genre. They're meant to go on forever and have weird, wild drama. And this, Mark and Eve are the soapiest part of this whole story. I'm curious to see like how much we're gonna check in with Eve like now that the plot has moved off-world. Invincible has proven that they can actually tell a compelling story without superheroes a la Debbie. But while I think we're gonna get a great scene or two, on the whole, given the show's track record with Eve, I'm not gonna be holding my breath we're gonna be getting too much greatness and that this pregnancy scare wasn't just mainly here to increase the stakes. Yes, the teen heroes fucked around and found out, and it's the worst possible timing, and oh look, now it's something Eve has to deal with. And while I'm sure this is gonna be traumatic and horrible and something that they're definitely have to have an episode of dealing with tension when she finally tells Mark, overall, the implications for what might happen with this, if they were to have Eve actually keep the baby, that feels like we'd be losing way too much possible story of Mark not being a dad. He's not here, he would just show up and like, okay, this is my kid now, everything's changed about my life. And while there is like a bunch of great stories in war where you can like do something like that, I've never gotten the vibe that Invincible wants to jump the gun that quickly. So much of Invincible has been like, oh, the evolving, the changing, how do you deal with the events that are unfolding around you? So to have Mark leave and then come back to what is effectively going to be a 1-year time skip for him, there's too much juicy storytelling potential that would be squandered by having Mark just jump back in at that point. They could try and do that juicy stuff with Eve solo, maybe bring Debbie into the situation, but let me put it to you this way. When Eve found out she was pregnant, Eve didn't have a single friend she could call her own to confide in. Because she doesn't have any, and it'd be weird as fuck for her to confide in Amber that, hey, your ex is now having a baby with me. Eve is not a horribly written character, but since she started dating Mark, her whole life has definitely felt like it's switched to being about him, and that sense has not broken in the slightest. So I have no confidence that they're gonna make this a bigger deal. There's something that I've always felt a certain way about Invincible, where the show is good, I like the writing, but it does have this tendency to call its shots super early, to make it obvious what's gonna happen and we're just then waiting for it to occur. In season 1, this style kind of works because the Nolan reveal of like, what is Mark gonna think and what's gonna happen? But then we get to the other seasons where it's just Mark and Amber are gonna break up. Mark is gonna become a killer. Oh, Mark is gonna have to do what's necessary and leave Earth. The writing is always on the wall, so I'm not afraid to call the story's bluff and be checked out of all of this. Also, yeah, Tech Jacket is here.
In the daytime, I'm Marinette.
Tech Jacket is a girl. Okay, apparently they're a dude in the comics. Also, they're a teenager, which feels like a choice just to give Oliver a friend to talk to that's their own mental age, and potentially ship him with her. Because God forbid someone in Nolan's bloodline stays single for a month. But the craziest thing about Tech Jackets is that her dad is voiced by Bobby Moynihan, SNL veteran. He was in Chosen. Crazy, weird, don't really care. But really, this just highlights for me how Invincible would rather die than cast a no-name actor for a role that barely has any lines. Like, I've never thought that Invincible is blowing all of its money on celebrity voice talent. Sometimes it really isn't like that much money to hire these people, but it's wild how many actors this show has been able to get for the most nothing roles. Like, we had fucking Oscar-nominated Jimon Honsu in the show speaking gibberish, and nobody would know that shit unless they checked the credits. Why? Like, they have to be catching these actors while they're recording for other shows, and then just offering them Amazon Prime for a year, as these polls are ridiculous. Also, holy fuck, that's LeVar Burton.
I wish I was Lance Reddick.
Look, at this point, it just feels like they're playing Pokemon with celebrities, and it's crazy. Also, I think Seth Rogen just has that many friends in Hollywood, which would explain most of it. But ignoring that, everyone is in space now. Oliver doesn't fuck with his dad, leaving Nolan to keep mourning what he lost with Debbie. It's cool, it's great, and then holy shit, it's Conquest. Yeah, I did not think we were gonna get this rematch so soon. Conquest he's still cool, love him. The expressions are deranged as always, with him and two other goons bringing us what is, in my opinion, the most okay looking fight Invincible has ever had, and it kind of makes me scared for like the rest of the season going forward. As ignore what happened on the planet where Mark, holy shit, was choking the life out of Conquest. When they're in space, the fighting is kind of boring. As outside of like Oliver's combos on Conquest's rib, the callback to Omni-Man nearly shattering a dude's head, except it was almost Oliver's, the rest of the space fight feels aggressively okay. I think the big thing is that they are in space. The sound is muted, but we don't have any real frame of reference for just how hard and how fast these characters are moving. This has always been an issue with the Viltrumites, where everyone is basically a god, throwing punches that could honestly level mountains, but they're also able to shrug that shit off, making it hard to convey just how hard and how strong these attacks are, or given the budget, just to have interesting fight choreography that is happening in the literal vacuum of space. As once we're here, there's nothing. We have some debris, so it's hard to make like, oh, they're going this fast, oh, they're hitting this strong. It's just floating, punches, maybe a light scratch or two, and everyone is fighting with basically the same style, which drags the fights dangerously close to action figures just bashing against one another. Maybe if we had a better sense of damage accumulating, it would add an extra little something, but as is, if this is what the rest of the season's gonna be, mildly worried. Though if this lets them keep saving money by not animating lip flaps, it honestly could be worth it, as then we get shit like this. Now, if I were to give my harshest, meanest thing to say about this episode, I would simply say I am disappointed that Conquest died. Because that dude was so fucking cool. I loved him. Standout villain of the last season. For him to come back, to be hyped up, oh, he's still alive, oh, he escaped, and he's here, and now he's dead. A little rough. He's the only one out of all the other Viltrumites I'm like, ooh, I'm excited to see him. As he is batshit crazy. So I was waiting for him to come back and for things to get horrible, to be like the new recurring villain of the story. So for him to just kind of die at the start to signal, oh, shit is different now. Things are dangerous. It's effective. The fight is cool. Properly gruesome. And because I know this is important to some people, I'm gonna hear this in my comments because there's so many of them last time. But the creator for Invincible, Robert Kirkman, he just axed the whole adrenaline fan theory about why Mark was able to beat Conquest Conquest last time. Turns out no, Viltrumites do have adrenaline, just like Mark. So Mark didn't have any secret reason for why he was able to beat Conquest besides he fucking locked in and Eve was there to blast the shit out of him. And I really bring this up because there is something to be said again about the inconsistent power scaling of this world. Because usually I am actually like, I'm okay with that. Not too big of a deal that Mark wins some fights and loses others, but I think the biggest thing for me is that the writing, the scene, watching Mark fight against impossible odds and still having the will to win, that is fantastic. I don't need an explanation about why adrenaline made him stronger for this to hit, as it'll always be more about the writing and not so much like, okay, a little wishy-washy here. That said, kind of crazy that Conquest, after getting thrown through 5 different mountains, didn't try and gouge Mark's eyes out, which he fully could have. Also, he probably could have crushed Mark's skull before he lost consciousness. But it's fine because, hey, Conquest still got to show Mark and us what Mark's made of. And yeah, I can't show any of this. But congrats on Invincible, it's been a while since over-the-top gore was able to affect me. This is, the squelching, Conquest's face turning blue, divine. Also, there's no way Mark should be able to survive this. It's not the part where his guts got ripped out of his body, it's that Conquest's arm is the size of Mark's torso, and it went through him, so every organ should be ruptured. But we know he's gonna live, he always does. And I, for one, cannot wait to see whatever horrible thing the show does to him next. And for him to laugh at the realization that the first man he ever killed was an innocent one. Okay, this is the end of the review, but we all need to take a moment and just acknowledge the Coalition is going to war, and the saddest thing about Conquest's death isn't that we won't see more of him, it's that he will never get to meet Battle Beast. Battle Beast is back, so I am a happy man. But this episode also put the Grand Reach on Fraud Watch, so I'm also concerned.
Is this your game?
Okay, last episode was fantastic. The second highest episode of Invincible ever, and honestly, deserved. It was greatness on greatness, the animation finally kicked in, and Conquest made spaghetti. So you can't really complain. Naturally though, this means that after such a high point, us then going into like a more of a chill episode, that was to be expected, but I just didn't expect for us to miss basically the entire Viltrumite war. Like, I'll be honest, I thought this was gonna be like a full season and a half of content, but instead it has been a montage while Mark was in a coma, and I think right now I'm mostly happy about that. This was in fact a good episode. We got that father-son bonding. Mark got that fantastic scene where he thought everyone he loved was dead again, and Optimus Prime.
It's that man. Oh, yes.
But with all this goodness, there is one itty-bitty thing that I'm having some concerns about, which is the Grand Regent himself. As this dude, I know his rep, I know his hairline, and I thought this man was gonna be moving like the goddamn devil, but instead we have him running away in what could have been his chance to fuck shit up, or just not be here so his first major scene wouldn't be an L. I have thoughts, there's opinions, but also we're gonna break everything down as this was a very solid episode, and it feels like after this we are truly moving into the end game, which is interesting, because Grandpa's probably itching to bust out the drugs again. We start the episode off with Thrag and Thetis giving their whole speech. It's like, oh yeah, we're gonna win, we got this, and we have the moral high ground. With us knowing exactly who has the moral high ground in this specific situation. Even though, yeah, there is some huge moral grayness around Optimus Prime. He has done some shit.
Not a line, but he's right.
But I think the most interesting thing that's introduced about Thrag in this episode is that he doesn't seem like the full evil leader type. And by that I mean, usually in these types of stories when we're seeing, okay, evil empire society that is just designed to make horrible people who will serve the empire and be their tools and wreak unholy destruction on everyone else. Usually in stories like this, the leader is somehow above it. They know exactly how evil they are and they are using the system to their advantage. But Thrag throughout this episode comes off as a little bit different. He seems like a true believer in Argyle's mission, that the Viltrumites are here to bring peace, stability, and that they will conquer all. And that I think he is actually so much more fascinating, as this episode, to just get right to the point, kinda makes him look pathetic, which is something I never thought I'd be saying about Thrag.
Soft. Overrated. Pretty boy. A bitch.
Dude is massive. Conquest bows to him. He is the leader, basically the king of all of Viltrum. So you'd expect him to be the peak of their society. Yet, here we see this man, still worshipping at the altar of Argyle, still looking at the king's skull and saying, I am doing this all for you. This is for the mission. We are going to do this. We are doing what is right. And in that, I find Thrag to be at his most interesting, because he genuinely believes this insane bullshit. That everything they're doing, child beatings and all, don't even want to think about all the kids they probably killed because they weren't strong enough. And he thinks that is all worth it for the stability and peace of the universe. And that makes him kind of sad to me, as he's not here being above the society using it for his own means. He wants this to happen because that's what he was raised to believe. He genuinely seems to think that Argyle's wish is what's good for everyone, so he's willing to do untold horrors to make it happen. And in that sense, Thrag is kind of like everyone else in Viltrum, which is a victim. Everyone in the society was groomed to serve it. They had all their empathy quite literally beaten out of them, with them then going on to continue the cycle with the next generation. And it kind of cements how, from top down, everyone is a slave in this society. That the soldiers that they use are being forced into it, all the Viltrumites are also forced into it, because they have never been taught another way. With this even including Thrag. And that's really cemented by his obsession with the skull. It's not just something that he worships, he rushes and tries to save that thing. He prioritizes it over basically the entire ship, and it adds this childish element to him that I kind of like. It adds like this, I don't know if it's pity or childishness, like, oh yeah, this is him holding on to this relic of the past and trying to honor it, and maybe not fully ever thinking about like, okay, is this actually what I want to do? It really does feel like Viltrumite society like fully abhors self-reflection. To see all of your people die and think, yeah, we should keep doing horrible things. That is something that everyone has called as being like one of their flaws, that they could have stopped, they could have found another way, and they didn't. And I do find all of that pitiful. And I like that as a small switch up from the typical evil emperor types who are usually so self-assured, but here we see that Thrag does have his weaknesses, this obsession, and that there might be a tiny chance to get him to like choose a different way. But given how obsessed he is, I doubt it's gonna happen anytime soon. Also, he probably might die, so never know about that. But this is like the first thing that really popped out to me with these intro scenes and like just overall thoughts. Though it's really like the only one of the two, as most of this episode is in fact Oliver and Nolan bonding and having a fat plot hole that I've been slightly irked about.
You said you didn't love my other mom.
How?
So yeah, Mark is holier than we remember. He is being nursed back to health, with all that nursing mostly being letting his Viltrumite body just patch itself back together. I've always been shocked by the fact that Mark has been able to like get really fixed up after every single one of these ass beatings. Initially I thought it was because, oh, Cecil has to have the greatest doctors on the planet. They can put all of his teeth back in his mouth. Probably. But this episode really makes me appreciate just how much of a healing factor the Viltrumites have. It's not like Wolverine levels of crazy, but it does let them heal from some shit that, yeah, 100% any other species would be dead, besides Alan, who would just be stronger. But Mark's healing factor aside, we actually begin this section of the episode with Nolan making Conquest a grave, and Oliver calling it out as being complete bullshit. Now, what I really like about this is it really shows like both of their characters. Nolan is here, probably having known Conquest for his entire life, that this man was a veteran of their society, probably insane, wasn't a friend, but he was someone who, just like Nolan, served the Empire and was raised to believe in the mission. So Nolan has some sense of kinship with him as one of the last of his kind and just another person that Viltrum led wrong, with this naturally wanting him to give him something of a burial, as he'd probably hope that someone would do the same for him. And if, yeah, he doesn't want to be a lost cause himself, so he doesn't want to like write off someone else just like that. But then there's Oliver, who is over here calling out, we're giving the mass murderer a grave. Really? And I find that so funny. Almost as funny as Oliver padding out his own stats, as he says, oh yeah, he almost killed Mark twice. And I'm like, dude, you said he only killed you once. Complete lie. He almost had you just as many times. But Oliver's here being pissy at his dad, and we're settling into the whole father-son field trip that I knew was gonna happen. I just didn't think we'd get it so early. But it's good. Nolan is still emotionally unavailable father, but he has learned he wants to try, and Oliver is the one who is shutting him out, as they have beef. reasonable, completely justified beef. Nolan didn't walk away to get some cigarettes, he was taken. But then he came back to the house to grab his older son and didn't even bother leaving Oliver a note, which would justifiably piss you off, especially when you're physically a teenager and you have spent basically your entire life, all, 2 years of it, trying to redeem your deadbeat father's image. Say like, oh no, what if I make things right, like wearing his shit, and people will associate him with good again, only for Daddy Dearest to show up and not love him. And even worse, call his mother a mistake.
Baby, she means nothing to me.
Now this is the one thing where the first time I watched this at probably, 2 a.m., I called bullshit. This felt like a plot hole, as the previous episode really doesn't go to show that Oliver came back into the house after Nolan had left and Debbie and Mark were talking. So in my mind I was like, what the fuck is what? This has to be, no, actually. They do slightly have enough here to get away with it. As you see, Oliver heard that shit. Just straight up he did, very valid. And the writers hit it in a kind of shady way that I don't fully like, as they wanted to keep it for this whole moment. Essentially what happened, and like the reason they kind of able to get away with this without fully calling it a plot hole, is that when Oliver gets back, he doesn't know what's going on with Mark and Debbie, but it's like, oh, why are you guys having this whole moment? But to us, it reads like, oh, he doesn't know about Nolan. When he does, he's just wondering what the fuck they're spiraling about. And then they cut away. So we don't see that he knows that Nolan was here, or that he's lying about knowing Nolan was here. So then when we get to him talking, it's actually him just saying, oh, he left without seeing me? And I'm like, okay, that kind of makes sense. It kind of covers the bases, even though emotionally, based on how we see Oliver act, would be like, yeah, fuck him, I don't want to see him, and that would be like the first thing we see him saying, and that would imply, oh, he did in fact know what Nolan said. But the weirdness of how they hid that aside, I do love the call out. And then we get into like, okay, and how they mend this break. As it takes a few weeks for the two of them to get on the same page. Oliver's being pissy at his dad, Nolan is just trying to like, well, necessities. We need food, we need to train you, X, Y, and Z. And Oliver's here bringing like the true emotional complexities that Nolan isn't really equipped to deal with. But they have time to keep talking, to keep hanging out, and for them to slowly start having those conversations about what happens and how it makes them feel. Nolan admits that he fucked up. That what he said before about Andressa, complete lie. Nolan loved Debbie, but Andressa was not a mistake. He genuinely, in his like horrid, like mentally destroyed states, he needs somebody to help show him a different way, as lest we forget, Nolan was about to kill himself. He was about to throw his body into a black hole and die, only to see the bug people nearly getting sucked in as well and deciding to be a hero one more time. This is the small act of kindness that allowed him to live, and to then meet Andressa and learn more about the bug pop, and to then meet the bug people and their whole society. That to them, there is no time to hold on to past grudges. The only thing that matters is that you keep trying to do good and to be better. And this is the thing that helped Nolan keep on going. This is something that Andressa taught him, and it's something that he later thought he might be able to slowly kind of rebuild his rep with Debbie, and clearly that didn't work, but it's a fantastic little character flaw for him that he was hoping that it might. As I feel like Nolan definitely knew that that wasn't fully gonna work, it wasn't gonna be that easy, but part of him still hoped. As everyone else he met during his whole apology tour, they were kind of forgiving him, but the context in which that happened is very different. For the rest of the galaxy, everyone knew him as the Viltrumite, aka the fucking monsters. So just the fact that Nolan was willing to apologize to say he's sorry, to be working against his people, that is huge, that is massive, that is something like, oh, this has only ever happened once in known history. So it adds an undeniable sense of sincerity and just, oh yeah, this dude is actually trying to change, and we should take him at his word. But on Earth, Nolan wasn't the Viltrumite. He was a hero. He was a good person, only for then everyone to find out that he was telling a lie. That he wasn't a good guy, he was a conqueror sent to destroy the planet, and called his wife of 20 years a pet. So it makes sense that everyone on Earth is gonna hold it against him, even if he was kind of hoping that they wouldn't. And make his later attempts to try and like get in their good graces so much harder. He got lucky with the bug people, they taught him exactly what he needed to learn in that moment. Everyone in space kind of kept patting him on the back saying, yeah, you fucked up, but but maybe we can work together. But then he hits a roadblock on Earth that he can't just say he's sorry. People aren't gonna be welcoming and just go back to the way things used to be. He has fundamentally destroyed their trust, but despite that, despite hitting that roadblock, Nolan is still trying to be better. And we see that with Oliver. We see the two of them together. They learn from one another. Oliver makes good points about saving the creature, the two start hanging out, he starts enjoying the food, and you see that the conflict that used to be holding them back slowly, like, it doesn't go away, but he becomes more distant as they have all these new memories and feelings, like slowly put some distance between the old wounds. Nolan finds a way to be a positive influence in Oliver's life, proving to himself that he is not going to ruin another kid. And Oliver, this young man who previously just had a very black and white view of the world, sees this very flawed figure and realizes that there is a place for him to have another chance, to possibly be better, and to maybe be the dad he always wanted. Yes, he did give Paul the hug, but I feel like that was also Oliver realizing, yeah, my dad's kind of a piece of shit, and Paul, you're kind of boring, but hey, at least you're not him. But it was very cute, just like the rest of this episode. Though we do have to acknowledge the fact that this episode seems to imply that Oliver is going to be a monster fucker.
Is where a person can be their truest selves.
Like, I joke that Tech Jack was made younger and a girl to be Oliver's love interest, but finding out that his type is lobster, that is crazy. That is such a choice. I know he's an alien, but I figured his type would at least be bugs. Though while we are on the topic of sex, I do think it's now crazy to think about that Viltrum society has had hundreds of years to repopulate, yet they're still trapped at only 50. Which brings me to the question, and maybe, okay, if you know this in the comics, comment and let me know, but is Mark the first hybrid Viltrumite? As based on this society, you just know that they're gonna be killing their kids. Even if they desperately need the numbers, they will look at these hybrids, realize they're weaker or don't get their powers fast enough, and kill them. They will try again, what's another 16 years. But for their population to still be this small, that is really like, okay, so has no one been trying besides Nolan? Have they not been breeding with each other? As at this point, for the fertility rate to be this low, you would think the Scourge virus was something like the genophage from Mass Effect where it also fucked up their fertility. Or again, they're just killing all of their kids, which is in fact just as likely. Also yeah, Mark woke up, thought everyone was dead. Great scene, loved it, but we just gotta talk about the facial hair and how this season, this is the most Korean Mark has ever looked. I know they had to change his design in season 1 to like, oh, maybe we should make him actually look like he's half Korean. Yeah, Mark's alive, thought everyone was dead, they all hugged. But enough about that. Let's talk about the war and how Space Racer must be hard carrying this entire operation. This could take out an entire Viltrumite fleet in 30 seconds. Like, it's crazy how OP this gun is. Though I guess he might have to hold back, as if those blasts never stop, they could just be flying through space and just hitting random planets. And as we saw in Nolan's novel, they could in fact wipe out the sun, which would be bad and cause just, he has to be very careful with it. But again, OP as shit. But who cares about him? We have the Teste de Resistance. The best character is finally here in the show. Yeah, Battle Beast. I think my favorite part of this scene is this look that Alan gives. As you just know, he is already planning to give this man a buffet and to let him do his work. Which you know isn't work, because Battle Beast is doing this for the love of the game. And I love him for that. So yeah, the whole war plot line as we understand it from like Alan's POV is kind of just mostly okay. It's like we get the montage, Alan and Tech Jacket escape. It's like, okay, good, fine. Again, holy shit, that gun. But then they get back on whatever the fuck the planet's name is. And it's fine, it's chill. But there's also like the whole mole situation, and I thought for a solid second that, hold on, let me look up her name. Oh yeah, it's Talia. I kind of thought that she was gonna be the mole, only because I keep forgetting that the mole plotline is an actual thing. See, here's the issue that I have with like this storyline, is like, it's not bad, it's simply running into an issue of we don't fucking know anybody here. We know 3 named characters. We got Alan, Talia, and Thetis. Nobody else here matters. So like, okay, who could the spy be? Well, Talia's like was the only real option. She like had some of your faces, she like got really serious, like they both did for a second there. And I for a second thought that Alan had learned that his girlfriend was the mole. Only for me to remember, oh yeah, they're trying to keep it on the DL during work. So for that to be a thing, for it to be mentioned throughout, but never like that important, and for it to be the rando alien. honestly perfect, as I don't care about him, don't care about this plotline, and it allowed for the Viltrumites to attack the planets, and for me to realize just how spoiled I was with Nolan destroying the Flaxen planets. Bro went ham. He destroyed everyone in what was like 30 seconds. So to see all that, and for then all the other Viltrumites to show up, and not even be able to pull a Man of Steel on this city, oof. I was hoping for a lot more civilian casualties. But still, like, okay, good sequence, this and that, and fighting is saying, holy shit, Optimus is jacked. Should have seen it coming. Wait, what was I talking about? Oh yeah, Mark punching Nissa in the face, and then, okay, this is the unintentionally funny moment of the episode for me, where Mark and Oliver team up and crash through the spaceship. I thought this was cool. I thought it was pretty dope. It did make me laugh though, in the worst kind of way, as there's so much that can be said about Invincible's animation, most of which is not going to be said by me, as everyone else is already doing it for me. But the fact that they had these two brothers crash through the ship, put all these like visual effects, this flare, like, okay, they're doing something awesome, this is a huge moment, only for the sequence to end. And then you can see that they can't actually change the PNG of the ship, so they throw a bunch of smoke effects on it. For some reason, that made me laugh so hard, as they are doing so much. They can't even tilt the ship to make it look like there's truly an impact. And I was like, damn, this is why I wish like this show had like another month, another two, like give them another half a year between seasons, as they are doing so much. They're trying to put it in where they can, but then if you notice or look too deeply at anything, it's like, oh, they did not have enough time here. But for the most part, it works, kind of like this entire sequence. Viltrumites are fighting, it looks pretty bad, then the Graysons show up, and suddenly Thrag runs away like a bitch, with the spy revealing that Thrag is gathering all the Viltrumites back to Viltrum, with Grandpa Optimus realizing this is the perfect opportunity. Maybe he's just that excited to bust out the Scourge. But overall, he is right though. When Alan's like, oh, there's so many dead, Thetis is just like, so many people have died. Historically, this is a blip in the radar. We are gonna win this fucking war. I'm like, I love that for you, dude. You have spent your entire career working for this. Curious to see how they're actually going to try and defeat the Viltrumites once and for all, as this season has been all about doing the necessary evil, which invites the question of what fucked up thing are they gonna do to win? The Scourge virus is the easiest option. I also like how this does seem to be a continuation of Thetis' own, well, he might end up repeating some of his old mistakes. As before, when he's pitching this idea of like, oh, we're just gonna go attack Viltrum and kill Thrag, that's gonna fix everything. He does like say, oh yeah, we'll be able to hunt down the individual Viltrumites one at a time. That is a pretty solid plan, but the last time he tried to off the Viltrumite leader, it only made everyone that remained worse. So it's percolating at the back of my mind is that if they were to actually kill Thrag, what other things could they do? How is everyone else going to start doubling down? Sure, we might be able to get some people to like turn and see the light, but they'll have lost everything, and who knows what desperate measures they'll be willing to stoop to next. As to keep theory crafting a little bit, the Invincible Reanimen, those things have to be used at some point. You do not make those things and then not have them shown being used, which invites the question of what the fuck are you ever going to use those things against? And the answer basically has to be Viltrumites. We have seen no enemy strong enough or numerous enough to need like 8 undead marks to rise to the Earth's defense. So if we're going through ideas of what's going to happen after the heroes win, I mean potentially, this whole plan could go horribly wrong, and then we get more space adventures. But if the heroes were to win, there is now a high chance that the Viltrumites could go to Earth. That they would say, okay, payback's a bitch, or more worryingly decide that they need to repopulate, as we've only seen 2 species that Viltrumites can actually breed with, and it's the Thraxans, who the Viltrumites seem to have found repelling, or humans, who seem to be at least an acceptable level of hybrid. So in a season all about doing the necessary evil, having the coalition beat Thrag, or at least like cost them the war, and then them turning around and saying, okay, you did what you have to, so will we, and then go to conquer Earth, that would be one hell of a way to adjust this war to like bring back the rest of the cast, and make things horrible for everyone, but I would be seated for all of it. Again, this was a fantastic episode. Some stuff I thought was gonna be bigger turned out to be a way smaller part of the story, but I can't say that I'm mad, as we don't know exactly where we're gonna go from here and what type of things are about to be unleashed. Though I will say, the actual funniest part of the episode is the Conquest fake out. I for sure thought he was about to come back to life, and I would have said yes, as I did think he died a little too quickly. But for them to do the bits, I adored it. That was a fantastic, got me so good. As I thought for a second it was actually gonna happen, only for a big fat no. Now, there's a lot of things I have to say for this episode, so many apologies and corrections that I need to make, but I feel like just to start, the one thing that is truly like I know you all are waiting for, I need to apologize. I did not think for a second that Thrag was older than Nolan.
That's rough, buddy.
Okay, yeah, this was an insane episode. So many things happened, and all of them were fight-based. We have the Coalition finally fighting the Viltrumites, Thrag showing the fuck up, the entire Grayson family ending up a smear on Thrag's fist. It was just back-to-back bangers, everything that the story has built up to this point, just being obliterated, much like the Viltrumites, who, despite being able to technically say they won, except no, they lost horribly, and now they are about to all become Cecil's problem. I did predict that this is where they were gonna go, but oof, I can't imagine what the finale is going to do next, and just how fucked Mark is, as Payback's a bitch, but as I kind of theorycrafted in the previous episode, what they're going to go do is kind of worse. So let's get into my thoughts and break down everything that happened, as this was a lot, and the story of Invincible can never be the same again. Okay, we start things out with a flashback to before the Great Purge, and when Optimus Prime finally decided to get his get back on Megatron. Yeah, for those who didn't catch that, this is such hilarious casting. These two ancient leaders of a planet that got destroyed, and they're just like, oh yeah, fighting over the scraps of what their people should have been. Argyle, as we see, is cold, brutal, and just very okay with wiping out 25% of a population just to prove a point. And we see that Thetis, at this point, was pushing back. He was like, okay, no, we need to like maybe respect them for this. They like are resisting us. Hey, but that like proves that they are strong. It proves that like, oh, they're actually something that we should value and respect. And the Viltrumites were like, no, we define what strength is, and we are not counting their resistance when what is being demanded of them is submission. But also, tangent, I have something to confess. I forgot about the shoe thing. If he and Debbie are still together by season 4, I'd eat my own shoe. Yeah, this sucks, but thankfully I will always fully cop to my mistakes, and one of the things I didn't fully clock that was revealed in episode 2 is that the Great Purges happened after Argyle died. For some reason I thought, oh, Argyle led the Purge, then he had the Empire, and then something Thrag took over. But as this episode graphically revealed, Thrag was the one who fully ordered the Purge. And I love the little scruples that this story has been giving to Thrag's character. As, again, I kind of don't like how they introduced him in the last episode, that he is like, okay, the strongest. We kind of got that idea with his first introduction, so to have him kind of be sitting back, watching his comrades struggle when we know, or like we figure that this dude can probably wipe out most of this planet. That did feel a little strange, especially with how he just runs away. But something that I deeply enjoy is that, okay, Thrag is just a zealot. He fully believes in all of Argyle's bullshit, and that ghost has haunted him for his entire life. And something that this flashback adds, I think adds a lot of depth to Thrag, is that he actually clocked Thetis. He saw like, okay, this man has changed. He's giving us some lip. He has some ideas of what we should be doing. And Thrag defined this as weakness. He thought this man was gonna be a problem, but when Argyle said, okay, if you think this is so bad, deal with it, Thrag didn't. He walked it back and was like, okay, at this point, he was not ready to just kill Thetis, a man he said he respected. And that small act of mercy, of cowardice was like, no. Maybe things aren't that bad that we need to jump to that conclusion, despite him being like, oh, still full-blown eugenicist might makes right at this point. He held off, and that exact night, Thetis killed his king. And that regret, oh, if I had just done something, everything would have been different, that really goes a long way to explain why, okay, Thrag is so obsessed with honoring Argyle's wishes and keeping the Viltrumite Empire alive, as to him, all of this, everyone that died, that is all something that he blames himself for. And I feel like that goes a long way to add context to his character and explain why he's like this. But speaking of things that have kind of changed by this flashback, Thetis. this makes him significantly worse in my mind. As this dude, yes, it's not that like he betrayed his people like to save the rest of the universe. The fact that like how the characters are portrayed, we see young Nolan, we see the young kids that Nolan was training. If they're all still this young, that would mean that Thetis could only have waited like 3, 4, 5 years before jumping to the Scourge virus. Dude killed the king, expected things like, oh, probably they might change, only to see that they didn't, and just immediately jumped to murdering all of his own people, which is, wow. I mean, it's justified because he's probably seen what Viltrumite has been for so long that he doesn't expect them to ever change. But that really puts in perspective like how quickly Thetis jumped to these extreme measures, and adds credence to the idea that even if like the team succeeded, they wiped out Thrag and all the other Viltrumites, bro is definitely gonna try something to wipe out the Graysons. As here's the thing that I actually kind of like about his mentality. Yeah, it's super fucked. He would definitely be betraying all of the people that worked with him to stop the greater threats, but I kind of also understand why he would think like this. He wants to make sure that the Viltrumite Empire can never rise again, and even if he trusts Nolan, he trusts Mark, he thinks Oliver is valid, that doesn't mean that they will be like this forever. Something might happen, they might change. But what's worse, and like probably the more worrying thing, is that Thetis can't be sure of what their kids are gonna be like. As if we're thinking about this, Viltrumite DNA is just excessively dominant. If they make an offspring with another species, as that person grows older, they'll just become more and more Viltrumites, and that probably means that their kids will become more Viltrumite as well. So eventually, the Grayson family, if they were like the last ones left alive, could have a small enough population that could threaten the universe, and that would be enough, like, okay, we just need one generation to be kind of cuckoo, and decide, oh, we want to embrace our legacy. And that legacy is getting very questionable given some of the statements that were made.
I now assume the throne as Grand Regent of Viltrum until one of Argyll's heirs can be found.
Like, I'm being real with all of you, I said, oh fuck, the second that I heard Thrag mention the heirs of Argyll. As this man clearly is just the regent. He's that fucked up like, okay, I can never replace the king. I'm not of his blood. But if there are any heirs, they're gonna take over like the second they show up. And you would think that they would know, or like Argyll would have hundreds of kids given his age, but apparently he didn't. But that is such a highly specific line to drop here and to then have Nolan appear in the very next shot, looking very serious, which is not me thinking like, oh, he knows something. It's like, oh, I don't think they had enough time to animate a different expression on him, because that thing happens a lot in this episode. From a writing standpoint, either we are going to get a Viltrumite who was just locked on a different planet, was maybe more peaceful, was a secret long lost heir of Argyll, or it's going to be Nolan. There are only so many characters they could be. So if we're gonna drop it like, oh, the heirs, they're somewhere, or like they might be, and to then not pull the trigger on that later. And in a story where Mark is the main character and we are playing into superhero tropes, it would be, and I'm trying to say this nicely, it would be very on brand for Invincible's side, like, oh, it's not just that, oh, Mark is the strongest, greatest hero ever, he's also the long lost heir to the Empire. And I'm like, no, I can absolutely see this story pulling that. Which that opens up the question of like, okay, what is Nolan's father's deal? Does he know that he's Argyll's son? Like, because that's how I imagine this being. Argyll has a kid, probably a bastard, doesn't know about. And then he has Nolan, who then has Mark. So we have this secret bloodline that may not know they're actually royalty, and at some point that's gonna come out. Because they don't drop the idea that there might be heirs and don't pull the trigger later. And they probably also have to do it because this would be Thrag's worst nightmare, as he has spent so long trying to honor Argyll's memory to suddenly have, oh, his sons or grandsons are alive, and they're my worst enemies. At that point, I feel like he would have a stroke as he realizes like, okay, his loyalty to Argyll versus his loyalty to the mission. And since the Graysons aren't gonna be doing this whole Empire shit, yeah, he would be very much in a bind of what exactly he wants to do. That's definitely a Chekhov's gun that's gonna be pulled, and just through pure, like, who else could it be? I'm just like, okay, yeah, Nolan's royalty. There, done, got it. Thragor the Purge and probably some self like, oh, I was weak. I must purge all of the weakness from our society. And that led to the culling, essentially. And I'm slightly disappointed in him that he didn't like go out and join the fray, but instead just looking sad, hiding in his throne room as everyone else was killing each other. But I do enjoy that, okay, it's all said and done. It doesn't seem like Thrag is truly dismissing all of the dead. It's done, it was horrible, but it was what he thought they had to do. And unlike Conquest, who apparently was just always a freak, he took no pleasure in ordering it. Everything the Viltrumites, fantastic. But the other craziest reveal of this episode, besides Thrag being older than Nolan, is the fact that Krieg was also around. Like, it's crazy. Like, I know this might be like, oh, they just can't give him like a fuller head of hair, but these Viltrumites have looked exactly the same for so long. Meanwhile, Nolan has gone from young to middle-aged. But speaking of things that are changing, we gotta get into the rest of the episode, as the Grayson family, they got turned into, well, liquids.
Stop! Stop! He's already dead.
Okay, while watching this episode, I had one thought ringing in my mind. Oliver, please shut the fuck up. These are so many death flags they were throwing around this kid. From him saying, like, oh, Thrag isn't that big of a deal. Like, oh, I love my dad. Oh, we're gonna win. I'm like, oh, it's gonna be easy. I was like, oh, they're gonna fuck this kid up. He is so freaking screwed. And I was waiting for it the entire time. But them traveling to Viltrum, having like their last meals, very cute little scene. Alan is being his usual goofy self, Tech Jack and Oliver are bonding, and of course the standout out of everyone is Battle Beast, as this man is such a freak.
My final meal will be my own blood.
Again, something that I really like about Battle Beast is that he just genuinely seems to be the exception to his entire species. We've seen his people. They do seem like warrior cats, but they're also in the Alliance. They're like, okay, proud warrior people, but they're not like going toe-to-toe with Viltrumites levels, or else they would have been fighting already. Which leads me to believe that Battle Beast is just fucking built different. He is just built for the smoke. And even though, like, okay, he's just on a jetpack, he's flying around, very much nerfed, and I am very disappointed he didn't get his scrap with Conquest and was just kind of thrown away by Thrag. Every second that this man is on screen is an utter delight. Truly, he is just a fantastic, fun presence. But enough is enough, people are talking. Invincible did his whole, oh, Eve, my last potential message, and then they just get to Viltrum, where, whew, yeah. Nobody tells Cecil about like the ring of dead Viltrumites, or else he would get bricked up at how many Reanimen he could potentially make. This whole sequence is haunting, and then Thrag shows up. And I do enjoy how he spends just literally 20 minutes aura farming before shit finally gets real. The ambush by the Viltrumites is very fun. I'm doing a power scaling video where I'm gonna talk more about like the general fights and like what I think some of the issues are for the story. But I'm just gonna get this out here. I still kind of don't fuck with the space battles. Like, it's fine, this is like very competent animation for Invincible, but oof, I am missing just the sense of weight all of these attacks should have. Like Thrag, God bless him, when he starts fighting, he's like, okay, these are some actual big motherfucking hits. But for everyone else, they might as well be playing patty cake. It's like, I know it's hard to make a space battle where you're just hitting people back and forth feel like, oh, you truly have all the weight to these hits. I can forgive like the PNGs and the random moments where like the eyes become a different style. I was like, can we just get a little bit more impact? That's all I'm really asking for. But I do find on the whole, this whole ambush, very good. But I did think the Hairblade lady was 100% dead. Like, last we saw her, she was choking on her own blood without a jaw. Yeah, again, Viltrumites, they can withstand some shit. But this fight, very fun. Everyone's getting their own little moments to shine, except Tech Jacket, who is just kind of shooting the darts. And just like personal thing that I was thinking about this whole fight, the Blade Lady. For how much Thetis was trying to like come up with a way to like pierce and kill Viltrumites, him having some weird dagger that was able to like actually kill Argyle, her having a blade that can cut Viltrumite's skin. Is there just like a super metal on Viltrum that like allows them to be that strong and that sharp that they're able to like actually cut people that most weapons should shatter against? As it's cool that she fights with weapons and that she is strong enough to wield them, but for how strong Viltrumites are shown to be, I kind of just want them to say, okay, this is made out of like super metal X, and just explain why Thetis has been losing his mind trying to get these metals. But speaking of losing my mind, there was one thing that I just could not stop thinking about this entire fight, which is very simple. Where the fuck is Space Racer?
It don't bite.
Yes, it do!
Again, great sequence. Glad he was bringing in those Ragnar freaks. Not sure how they're moving around in space, but okay, him coming in, they're doing the ambush. Thrag only moving the tiniest amounts. Very cool. But then shit gets real as Thrag enters the fray and him and Nolan have a quick talk. Now this scene is mostly Nolan just reiterating, okay, you guys are not my family. He doesn't want to wipe out his people. He doesn't want to destroy Viltrum, but to protect his own, he is willing to do anything. And on the flip side of this, we have Thrag, who is very much of the same mindset, as Thrag is willing to do anything to preserve Viltrum. And I also think this episode reveals one of Thrag's greatest flaws, which is the fact that I think Thrag values the Empire more than its people. Dude will say that he mourns for each and every lost Viltrumite. He didn't kill Mark when he very much could have, but at the end of the day, he is still willing to throw his men into the meat grinder to let them die when he could have just stepped in and wiped out half of the coalition. And I feel like for me, this is building up the idea that Thrag, for all of his statements, all of his grand speeches, for how much like he seems to genuinely mourn Argyle, he is also very much blinded by the idea of like the Empire, that this is what he wants to preserve, that this meant everything to him, yet he was also willing to continually sacrifice Viltrumite lives, and probably didn't step in because like, okay, no, Viltrumites should be able to handle their own problems. These people are beneath us. And is willing to lose and sacrifice some of the last of his people to preserve the empire and culture that they built. Thrag is a man obsessed. He refuses to change, refuses to let go of the fascist empire his father figure built. So this leads me to think that Thrag is going to get screwed over one of these days by the fact that he has always seemed to prioritize the empire over its people, or this might be the thing that he has to change about himself once he's on Earth, as now he's stuck with just, what, 6 Viltrumites? And now they have to figure out ways to adapt, and I'm not sure if this dude is gonna be able to do it. Which would be very fitting since he's basically able to do, break, or change anything else, as he is, yeah, the strongest character in the story. Oh yeah, Thrag's a demon, the impact shot was insane. Oliver, that was brutal. Though I will say, I saw the impact shot like, oh no, his arm's missing. Holy shit, his jaw's gone. I was like, damn. I bet this looked so much better in the comic, and then I looked like, oh yeah, no. That is, damn, that looks good. And there's a couple other shots where like, okay, similar vibe. Great sequence, Thrag is killing everyone, and Nolan sensing that they were gonna lose, fucking destroyed Viltrum. Insane, absolutely amazing sequence. This is like, okay, no, I was expecting Thrag to get like a lot more insane feats for the animation to pop off for him like it does for Conquest, but seeing all of Viltrum break, rip apart, and then explode, that was the test de resistance. It looked so cool, even if while watching it I did think, what are the Viltrumites actually doing here? Like, I get they're the ones that are actually destroying the planets, but there's a lot of shots, like, it looks like they're just following the hole that the gun made. But then we get to the explosion, it's like, oh yeah, that was awesome. Viltrum is gone. Thrag is legit crying. And at this point, I was like, yeah, everything he does after this point, very understandable. Even though he is still the fucking villain. Rip Optimus Prime. The one shot, though, of Mark running for his life is gonna live rent-free in my head, just like this one random back shot. Like, there's really not much else to add other than, yeah, Thrag fucks everyone up. Nolan is being near to death, Oliver is in pieces, and Mark is just destroyed. It's brutal, violent, we're finally getting some hits that have actual weight to them. Thank God. At the very end, Thrag spares Mark. And I do feel like it's just because after losing everything, even Thrag hit his limit. Which is very interesting that Thetis' original idea was like, oh, if I can just hit the people with a Scourge virus, it may not kill everyone, but it would break them just enough to make them change and stop. And Thrag did. But I feel like that this mercy is only ever going to be extended to his fellow Viltrumites, as the rest of the universe does not matter. So Mark is allowed to live, and half of it does just feel like for breeding purposes, as we discovered the Viltrumites are going to Earth. And given their disgust of the bugs, the utter lack of other hybrids we've seen, this does lead me to believe that Thrag is not going to, oh, eye for an eye. No, he's going to take it over and get laid. Shit. Like, I knew the Reanimen were gonna come back, but given how they have to go up against Thrag, I expect them to just get thrashed immediately. Mark has spent so long trying to protect Earth. He stopped the Viltrumite Empire as, yeah, their planet's gone, their numbers are at their absolute lowest. And given the fact that the Coalition now has ways of defeating them, they're just, well, they need to replenish their numbers and to build themselves back up to a real fighting force. Though that does then open up a very interesting question, as are the Coalitions willing to like fight them to take back Earth? As they now have reliable ways to kill Viltrumites, so even if Thrag is still basically unstoppable, I could actually see the story doing like a 3-way war here, where it's Earth just trying to survive, Thrag trying to take it over, and the Coalition showing up to kill all the Viltrumites. So that is just going to lead to some absolute absolute insanity, which after this episode, yeah, anything can happen. They destroyed an entire planet, which does fulfill the whole necessary evil theme that this story has been playing around with. And now we're gonna see what everyone else does in response. Will Alan lead the coalition to go attack Earth to get rid of the Viltrumite threats? What will Mark do to free his people if the planet gets taken over? If Eve actually has the kid, I can actually imagine Thrag stealing them. As if Thrag gives up on trying to convert Nolan and Mark, he might decide he'll have better luck with the rest of their bloodline. Yeah, overall fantastic episode. It was fight, good lore, and battle beast. Now, just to chime in on something that has been getting a lot of drama lately. Thrag and his general presentation. Personally, I think his voice actor is really good at quiet monologues. He does have a great sense of presence, okay, he is talking and you are all wrapped in horrifying attention. The second it comes to his yelling and his I do feel like those are the moments where he is at his weakest. Though I never feel like it's anything to a true detriment to the story and his character. Design wise, I'm yeah, he looks amazing in the comic, and he's just a guy in the show. Now, I'm not an artist, so I'm not going to complain or talk about oh, they could have done this to make him look better, or that he doesn't look like a cat in this shot. But if I were to change one thing, and this is a small thing, I want to so badly get rid of these under eye lines, which don't really look like under eye lines. They look like just, oh, they're animating his lower eyelids. I don't know how to explain it. I just feel like it makes him look cheap. And just because okay, no, I'm gonna have to be crazy here. I started to remove them in Photoshop, and I think they look better. But what's worse, I filled them in, and I feel like Thrag actually rocks the fuck out of the guy liner, and I'm just okay, they are picking the worst of both worlds with these things. As whatever intimidation factor this is supposed to add in the comics, it's really just not giving when it's animated. Mark just made a choice he can never take back. And I'm not gonna lie, this felt more like season 5's premiere than season 4's finale. But most importantly, it has now made me look like an idiot. I'm only mostly kidding. This was still a pretty good finale to cap off this season. We had twists, we had turns, we had Mark having some very valid hallucinations. We got a ton of setup for where this story's gonna go. Mark made a choice that, he always wants to do what's best for his friends and family, even if it means what's worse for the universe. Meanwhile, Alan is teetering with a decision of his own, and I cannot believe that Thaddeus would trust Alan of all people to use it. Also, we got some other stuff going on, Dolan and Debbie. So we're just gonna get into everything and see exactly where I land, as this was a very interesting finale. Maybe not the greatest one, as it is truly the first finale we've ever gotten from Invincible, where it's just kind of low-key. So on the whole, I am not mad or disappointed in the slightest, but the fact that my Invincible sponsorship told me to air on episode 7 instead of 8, that is suddenly starting to make a lot more sense.
Do you know something at all, Don? Booby, I probably know a lot you don't.
Okay, we open up on what I can only describe as the first of a lot of fake outs. Yes, the opening of Thrag and the Viltrumites destroying Earth as their get back for what Mark did to Viltrum. Very cool. Them creating a whole ass tidal wave using the force of their speed. Perfect. Very awesome. But then it's a fake out. And first things first, the jump scare these things give me is so good. But after the second time they do it, it's just it's oh yeah, they're doing this again. It works, I'm not taking it seriously, till it's not a fake out. But I think more than anything else, this is such a good way to show just how Mark has been so thoroughly traumatized by everything he has gone through. As who else but Mark deserves to have massive, horrific flashes of the Viltrumites destroying his life? Literally every season is just Mark getting jumped. First it was his dad, then it was Anissa, then Conquest when it wasn't just himself. This boy has been through it, so knowing that the Viltrumites are out there, knowing what he did, yeah, he is gonna be jumping around to every corner expecting Thrag to be there and to kill everyone he loves. As while he knows he had to do what he had to, them getting their revenge and Mark living in fear of that is so him, and very much, yeah, I'm thinking the same shit. When is that shoe finally going to drop? And so it's natural that they're gonna be baiting it out throughout the entire episode. After a point, it's no, I can see the timestamp. Y'all are gonna milk this for a little bit more till the very end. But the pathway to get there is still very enjoyable, even if it was a lot of choices that I'm ah, wonderful. That's amazing. Yeah, this is great writing. It's not like I don't kind of dislike it at all. But to get into that first, we have to say, oh yeah, Tech Jacket is still just here and reunites with her father because I still don't care. What are we talking about this? The boys are just trapped. Nolan, Mark, they are on a ship waiting to get to Earth, and the whole time they can't stop thinking about what the Viltrumites are doing to their planet. And I love this sense of powerlessness, this loss, that they just cannot get out of their own heads and just keep thinking of the worst possible scenarios, as all of them have a very high likelihood of actually happening. The only solace Nolan can ever have is that he probably never showed the other Viltrumites Debbie, so even if they can't go for her personally, he is still very concerned that they are just gonna wipe out the planet and take it under their, well, rule. So you kind of get why they're out of it and not able to listen to what's going on around them. But eventually they do get to the planets, and Mark is just going through a list of seeing, okay, who's alive, is everything okay? The second we get to Earth, you know everything is a little bit different because they're stressing how much things are the same. Mark is to his mom, she's checking out, she's annoyed that Oliver isn't here with him, but it's fine. It's oh, yeah, he just needs to recover. But at this point I realize, oh, she's still in the house, and I don't see Paul anywhere. Which is strange because I just started to like him, and it'd be weird if he suddenly were to disappear. And I just ate part of my fucking shoe. But we're just gonna keep following Mark for a little bit. We're just gonna leave that for its own section. Mark goes off to Eve. And it's, again, you know my feelings on these two as a couple, but their reunion, it's cool, it's sweet. I do think the funniest part of their first interaction is that it's so perfectly lined up with this one piece of slander I heard said about season 3, where Eve had more sex than character development, and since they immediately go to fuck, I'm like, yeah, that still carries through. But they do this one thing with Eve where I was like, wait, really? Which is, her design's changed. Mark's been gone 10 months, she hasn't been getting back into the hero game. The stress has got to have been killing her, so she's just put on a little weight, which is a thing that happens in the comics, something that comic fans would not shut the fuck up about. As there's supposed to be a whole line here about how Mark kinda likes Eve thick, which fair. It's kind of made funny by the fact that Eve says this, oh, as you can tell, I'm like, wait, can I? Because the way they show her initially is that we never actually get a full body shot. We see her from the side, we see her in bed, and yeah, maybe her arms are a little bit thicker, but on the whole, we never get an actual look on how much she's changed before they go into this line, which to me, massive missed opportunity. But then we see her a little bit later, I was like, damn, so they meant thick with 2 C's instead of a K. I'm sure it's so hard for Mark and all the fans watching this. Oh, it's so much. However, they do have their little scenes together. Mark is still fucking depressed, as no man has had more reason to have burnouts than him right now. With us then watching Mark try to get back into his usual Earth routine and constantly be reminded of how all of this can just go away in an instant. Mark is waiting for his world to fall apart so he can't actually enjoy the friends and family he spent so long missing. I like that out of everyone here, William's boyfriend was one who was able to clock what Mark's going through. As being turned into a cyborg and just that horrific long-lasting trauma, that lives with you and allows you to see it in other people. So I am very happy out of everything to happen this season, Mark finally decides to get a real fucking therapist instead of just constantly talking to Eve. He says, okay, Cecil, I'm gonna need your people. I'm like, okay, great, good for you. But I was really hoping for one stray line, just hey, I ran into Conquest. What the fuck did you do? But it's not there and completely fine. I do feel like Invincible, and what I've heard fans complain about from the comics is that out of all the things that get taken out, some scenes are removed that could have been, well, less depressing. Eve's dad was originally gonna have this whole thing about oh, she's not a virgin, thank you Mark for looking past that. But instead, Eve's dad is just kicking him while he's down. Similarly, we don't get that full it's kind of like a joke in the comic from what I've seen, the one panel, when Mark says he doesn't mind how Eve looks now. And again, I also feel like that is removed for the sake of depression. There's a very depressing and just grinding down tone that Invincible has chosen for Mark, and while I feel like it's a little tiring at times, I do understand why they make those cuts and want to keep things a little bit consistent, as they drive Mark to this extreme of all extremes, and then find a way to knock him even lower. Something we see again when Eve reveals that, yeah, she had an abortion. It's sad, it's heartbreaking, and Mark is crushed by the fact that he wasn't there for Eve, and then we kind of just move on. Or at least I would if not for the one line where Eve says okay, I get it, I get the life. And I'm like, yeah, very strongly been established about Eve and Mark's relationship. One of the things that makes them work the most is that they understand what the other one is going through and is able to like give them grace and like allow them to be a superhero. But that said, given something else that is said this episode that is starting to feel like an excuse for writing decisions, that they can just hand wave certain people away. But we'll get to that. As speaking of hand-waving decisions, I cannot for the life of me understand why Thetis would pick Alan of all people to lead the coalition. As like, here's my thing. I really like Alan. He is so fun. Truly, out of everyone in the story that isn't Mark, Alan feels like he has the truest heart of gold. Besides maybe also Debbie. This man just wants to do good and help people. So, for genocidal Optimus Prime, if I'm gone, we need to make some hard choices. The Viltrumites must be stopped. And he then chooses the goodest of good boys to give him the super virus. That has me like, okay, this had to have been a thing that happens in the comics, as after everything the story has shown me, for what Thetis is asking Alan to do, I am very much questioning why he would choose Alan of all people to potentially carry this out. Especially when Tila is right there. Like, this is the woman I feel like everyone said like, oh, she kind of seems sus. She's like, we get a bunch of weird looks and had people think that she was gonna be the spy. If you're to tell me anyone here is like, okay, the ends justify the means, we gotta do what we gotta do, I feel like it would be her. So for Alan to be the one trusted, I'm questioning Optimus's judgments. But given how poorly so many of his other choices have worked out, this does track. The fact though that the Scourge virus also would kill humans, that is, okay, very brilliant. I see like now they can add actual stakes versus like, hey, Mark, I need you and your dad to leave the planet for a few months. It escalates the virus to being something that truly is the end game. This is the thing that could destroy the planet and would force Mark to side against one of his close friends. Or sorry, one of Nolan's close friends. I have no idea if Alan's actually gonna use this thing, but given how the Immortals said that Mark was sick, and that was like the reason he left the planet, high chances that thing will be used at some point, though we can't say for sure that Alan's gonna be the one who uses it. As given how antsy the rest of the council is, any one of these yahoos can pull the trigger. But on that, we will have to wait and see. But Alan's now the king of the coalition? Okay, I guess. I honestly cannot foresee this going well. Especially how Mark has made a decision that will certainly put him and Alan at odds. As Mark has decided that between the universe and his loved ones, he's gonna choose his loved ones as he has decided to co-sign Thrag staying on the planet. In what is basically the equivalent of Viltrumite spring break.
What I'm getting laid.
Okay, I'm gonna say this before I get into the actual scene itself. Funniest thing about this montage is me realizing that Krieg is probably a Viltrumite 4, but on Earth, he is a 9. And depending on the crowd, he could be a 10, as this man is going to be fucking. But yes, Thrag, after so many fake outs, finally sees Mark, cutting off the whole, well, another one of the musical montages we've been getting a lot less of lately, and basically drops Mark with his ultimatum. I can kill you at any moment. Mark tried swing, did absolutely nothing. I saw this great comment that pretty much nails it down perfectly. Thrag is to other Viltrumites what Viltrumites are to humans. He is that much stronger, and there is absolutely nothing Mark can do against this man. And even if he were to just like hold him off, the rest of the Viltrumites are here, and they, at the drop of a hat, could destroy the planet, putting Mark into an absolutely unwinnable position. And Thrag knows this, which is why he gives him the ultimatum. Either you sit back, let us breed, rebuild our population, use the humans that we know because of you can have all of our powers and strengths, and slowly over time, we can rebuild till eventually, I'm sure, they try to take over the universe again. Thrag, despite having every reason to hate Mark, offers him peace. And that is probably the craziest thing to happen in this episode. That after everything he did, yes, we saw that Thrag spared Mark before, and I did predict like, oh, they're probably going to Earth to fuck. But actually seeing it happen and just be like, hey, we're not actually here to fight. We are going to be here, we're gonna keep things quiet, and we are going to rebuild, but not take over. That is so much more deeply sinister than them just showing up and hijacking everything. As well, you could argue this is gonna give Cecil some time to think of some type of solution to beat them. In reality, what is happening here is that Mark is becoming complicit in the future subjugation of the universe. That after all of Mark's defiance, everything he has done to protect Earth, rejecting his father to potentially save the planets, yet when faced with Thrag, Mark gives in. He cannot see a way out of this and decides that this is just what he's gonna have to do. It is such a great moment. As he is fighting, he does not want this to happen, but then he caves. And now, anything that happens is going to be on his head, and it so perfectly ties with all of Mark's struggles this season. He's trying to do what he thinks he has to, and he has kind of been jerked around this entire time. He killed an innocent man to save the Earth, went to war to protect it, destroyed Viltrum because he thought it would end things, and now, when presented with the possibility of total annihilation, Mark gives up. Sure, he might try and plot against them later, tell them like, hey, they're here, bring all of those like bug juice things so we can like kill them off one at a time. But for this moment, despite every other instance of him resisting, despite meeting actual Satan, Mark finally makes a deal with his devil, and that optimistic young man we've been following dies. Mark has made compromises, he has done things that he doesn't want to, but it's here that Mark's willpower to do the right thing finally breaks, and I am so interested to see what happens next. Also, we have to acknowledge what an absolutely raw deal this is for all the female Viltrumites. As for the men, it's like, oh yeah, go off, have a ton of sex. It's like, look over the window, it's like, yeah, once a year should be fine. It's, that is a very different situation. Also, I cannot wait to see who Thrag pulls. As you just know with that hairline, he is going to get swarmed with offers. Also, Cecil's going to have a heart attack when he hears about this.
Jesus fucking Christ. Great job out there.
Yeah, Cecil's also in this episode, capping off certain story beats from saying, yeah, Monster Girl and Robot are kind of fucked, and have a very tense conversation with Nolan, and reminding Nolan of the actual cost to all of his, well, it's be mean to call it a midlife crisis, but his existential one about what he wanted to do. Cecil, more than any other character in the story, is actually been big on rehabilitation, of the idea like, okay, you were a villain once, you can do something different. But despite knowing that, despite like never wasting a good asset, he still treats Nolan with a very appropriate level of fear. As that man, everything that he has done, the trust that he betrayed, even if he did in fact go against his own people, destroy their world, okay, cool, good for you. We still have so much more work to do, and there are so many people that are dead because of you. So having one sorry doing one good deed, that is not enough to suddenly make everything okay in his eyes, even if you can see that Cecil is like process like, okay, how can I use this to my advantage in the future? I'm gonna have to play this just a little bit nice and like, maybe we can work something out here. Though he is also being appropriately pissed that Nolan says, oh yeah, we have an alarm system being set up, and it will be absolutely worthless to defend you. And speaking of rehabilitation, let me now talk about what was probably my least favorite line of the season.
You believe in rehabilitation?
No, thank you, Nick.
Okay, to set the scene for you, I watched this episode at like 1 a.m. and after it, I had to double check the line, make sure I wasn't crazy, call 3 different people, and we all had the same general sentiments. Confusion, as when the fuck has Debbie ever brought up rehabilitation?
Honestly, it's never come up before.
Debbie has always been a good person. She just has this boundless love and empathy that can be extended even to Oliver, who was just basically dropped on her doorstep with the fact that, yeah, her husband of 20 years lied to her, called her a pet, and then immediately started fucking a bug and had a new kid that she is now expected to raise. Just for doing that, she is a saint. So while everything Nolan says in this statement I kinda believe to be true, for him to just say it so explicitly, and doing so in a way that is looking me dead in the eye and saying that, oh yeah, they're getting back together, motherfucker, as Paul's gone and they're going on an extended space trip together.
So they're back together and everything's fine?
That had me feeling a little bit weird, as I do believe everything Nolan is saying feels fully in character. That him being like, hey, I nearly died, I am still trying, and him still like wanting to be in his feels and be like, no, please give me a chance. And her saying, fuck no, I don't have to do shit, which I support. But for him to then double down and say, hey, you will, which was the biggest ick I've gotten so far from him, and then explaining to her why she's so great and why he feels like she is going to give him this chance. That had me squirming out of my skin. As I do like Debbie and Nolan, I feel like their dynamic is super interesting. They're two of the best characters in the show, so them getting to spend more time together is something I'm not going to be saying no to. Especially when Debbie wants to go see Oliver and make sure that he is okay. But the way this is framed, the way Nolan is just here saying, hey, I'm gonna fight for this, and I know you're going to cave, not sure that I like that, as I do have a distinct idea on what's going to happen, and I thought the show was throwing a bit of a curveball instead, which I supported. But for them to kind of clear the way in the finale, I'll be honest, I'm on my knees, I'm talking into this mic, praying to God that they at least wait till the end of season 5 to have them start fucking again, as Paul is just gone and it's just so offhandedly.
Things between us didn't work out.
Can we not have had this conversation 1 episode ago before I ate part of my fucking shoe? Like, it fully makes sense that they would break up, but the line of like, yeah, this is your world, I'm like, we spent so much time endearing Paul to us, showing like why this is like kind of working. Oliver gave him a hug, which cemented his role into this family. So to then offhandedly throw his ass to the curb the second Debbie wants to like go on a solo trip with her ex, heavy-handed is the best way I can describe this, just like that shot of them looking at Earth as it goes away. As yeah, so beautiful, so cool, so romantic. Which has me thinking that Nolan might not obey Thrag, but he will definitely be following his orders, as these two are gonna be going to town again.
You give up too easily.
It's crazy for how much they go at it, they only have 1 kid. Okay, on the whole, I feel like this is a very good way to cap off the season. A lot happened last episode, so them going for a more chill finale, a little bit of tension, like, oh, what's going to happen? Then dropping the bomb that is the new status quo of this universe, and possibly putting Mark and Alan, like maybe even Mark against Nolan, like, what are we gonna do about this situation? That, I think, is a fantastic setup for God knows what. And don't tell me what's gonna happen, as it's way more fun to guess. This season on the whole, yeah, pretty good. I think I'd rank it just a little bit lower than season 3, as while I feel like this season flows a little bit better as like an overarching story, season 3 had such fantastic back-to-back episodes, and like, I feel like that's just a little bit higher for me personally. I'm super curious to have an episode just all about Robot and Monster Girl trying to escape that dimension, but there's also so many other things to be mining into, and I am going to be here for all of it. I feel like, again, my only real 2 criticisms for the show right now are that A, just give the animation more time, please. I swear to God, it does bother me at places, but on the whole, it's like, it's fine. It's something that you come to accept. The other thing is that I really want Mark to find some happiness, as right now we have been through like 3 seasons of this man being the most burnt out person on the planet. Please let us have Mark have a little bit of a normal life, as this man has been beaten down so many times, so often. I know it's meant to be ironic for the name, but I am very close to hitting my angst meter. I'm like, okay, I'm starting to just tune it out. Please, can we go back to Nolan? It is still quality, but I can feel that emotional plateau coming. But that is still very much a me thing. So I'm gonna cop to that. So I'm just gonna call it here. Thank you all for watching these Invincible reviews. It's been as fun as always, and stay tuned for the next video that I'm about to make, as it's also superhero related, but something that I missed the boat on and have been very, very excited to talk about. Let me know though what you all thought of the season overall. What was your favorite part? Who was your favorite character? And at this point, is there anything that can happen to Mark that he can't walk off, as there isn't a single part of his body that hasn't been turned into near ground beef?